dignitaries, members of Indian Observer Post Board of Economic Studies from 21 universities, and all my friends and guests who are here to participate in this special webinar 21 for 21. But before I formally welcome you all, I would request my sincere and senior team member Himangi Arora Mishra to play a promo video. Himangi. Thanks, Ivangi. I think there was some technical error or maybe internet issue. So first, I'd like to extend a welcome to our participants, contributors, and distinguished speakers from different parts of India and abroad. This is a very unique event inviting thoughts of young leaders and scholars for inclusive and sustainable growth of the rural, remote, and other underprivileged parts of the country, particularly in post-COVID-19 challenging situation. I'm thankful to all who could participate in this idea generation event. I'm confident that some of these ideas will be considered by the union government as we soon plan to submit it to the Ministry of Finance and PMO after today's event. Several eminent speakers, scholars, and economic experts are present here today in this webinar, and I'm very much excited to hear your views, ideas, or suggestions for the economic development and way forward for India, especially before India's 75th independence, which is in 2022. I welcome to all distinguished personalities present here. First of all, I would like to welcome Dr. Himachalam Das Raju, Professor Emeritus UGC and Commonwealth Visiting Fellow, who is going to chair today's webinar. Now I welcome our chief guest, Sri Gopal Krishna Agarwal, National Spokesperson, BJP Economic Affairs. Our guest of honor, Ambassador Anup K. Mudgal, former High Commissioner of Mauritius. Dr. Ram Upendra Das, Professor and Head Center of Regional Trade, New Delhi, who will be giving a keynote address today. I welcome Dr. Shiv Tripathi, an eminent academician and sustainable development expert who is moderating the today's session. I am welcoming Professor Dr. Ernest von Kemakovic, founder Humanistic Management Network. I also welcome our special guest, Mr. Puran Chandra Pandey, resident representative, Climate Scorecard, and board member, the World Food Program Trust for India, who will give his thoughts to revive the economy and will also moderate the session for Idea 21 for 21. I welcome our two prominent lady speakers, Ms. Arpita Mukherjee. She is Professor ICRIER, New Delhi, and Ms. Nirupma Saundarraja, Senior Fellow and Research Head, Pehle India Foundation. And I also welcome Dr. Rahul Singh, Professor and Chair of Strategy, Innovation and Entrepreneurship area of BIMTech Greater Noida. Dr. Pritesh Kumar Sahu, faculty member, Birla Global University, Bhubaneswar. He will be presenting a summary of 21 ideas given by young economic thought leaders from across India. I welcome Major General Dilawar Singh Ji, Founder Director, Global Chamber of Sports, Education and Culture, Delhi, who was a former DG of NCC, additional DG of NCC, and DG of Nehru Yuva Kendra. And Mr. Chandran Iyer, founder and editor of Corporate Tycoons, and all other participants and contributors. Thank you for all your presence, time, and great contribution. Welcome to all esteemed guests again. The unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. And when we say that the battles of this century will be fought and won on the power of ideas, then surely this unprecedented time needs unprecedented ideas for revival of our economy. The great lockdown 2020 did what the great recession could not do, 2008 could not do. When the definitive history of this pandemic period is written up, the year 2020 will be recorded as a defining year in the history of modern civilization, marked by the great pandemic, comparable in its scale in the Spanish flu of 1918 and exceeding the economic loss of the Great Depression of 1930s. However, with a never say die attitude of India's myriad diverse but united people, the pace of contraction reduced drastically. Life after COVID will not be the same again, but human endeavor has time and again shown that it's never too late to seek a newer world. We must reach out with a strong will to strive, to seek, to find, not to yield. This is the time to analyze the present and future business environment, policy, and strategy post corona crisis. This is also the time to analyze the implications of a global downturn on a resilient Indian economy. We need suggestions for reforms and ideas for revival. What are the policies that would enable India to optimize these emerging opportunity? And what should be, as a nation, we should do in concert so that we turn out to be winners and not losers? A UNCTAD report has pleaded government to do whatever it takes to stop economic contraction becoming a recession or worse, a prolonged depression, and to protect the poorest. Indian Observer Post Board of Economists asked our young economic thought leaders of 21 universities from across India, who belong to several premier universities and institutions like IIT, IIMs, and others, to send 21 ideas and suggestions from rural Bharat who could be helpful in inclusive economic development and to revive Indian economy. All these ideas are being compiled and converted into a report by our global board of experts and will be submitted to the government and all members of parliament, chambers, government functionaries, and the media. So now let me talk about 21 ideas for rural India in 21. There is a famous quote attributed to Reagan, which is generally used as a satire, and it says, government's view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases. If it moves, then tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it. So jokes apart, but we all know that idea is must. Neither man nor nation can exist without a sublime idea. And no idea is too small, and all sorts of ideas have potential to change the world as we know it for the better. For example, I am presenting an idea. Our Prime Minister wants yoga to be exercised by all. Wonderful. It's useful for everybody. So my humble suggestion and idea is government must pass an order to make it compulsory to appoint yoga teachers in every school in India within 3 years. India has 1.5 million schools. So without spending any single penny, you can create more than 1.5 million jobs because there will be requirements for yoga teachers. So training schools will open, syllabus will be required, and then the trainers will require. So a whole lot of a series of jobs will be created. Similarly, we want to do swakshata or cleanliness. So there is an option government can pass order to all private companies having net worth of maybe over 100 crore to recruit health and hygiene experts in their companies. Lakhs of more jobs will be created. And I will tell you, India has already seen a five-fold increase in clean energy jobs in the last 5 years. According to NRDC CU report of 2019, nearly 1 lakh workers were employed in India's solar and wind market, up from 20,000 around workers in 2024, 2014. So EU, United States, and others are similarly doing. So these are a few examples. What I want to say that if we address the issue in totality, there can be good solution with multiplier effects. I am requesting all our dignitaries and experts to share their ideas or suggestions in brief, need not to be focused on rural, but overall, and also send me one or two para each post this event so that we can incorporate it in our final report. With this, I am thankful to you all and look forward to a productive event. Now I am handing over to Dr. Shiv Tripathi for moderation of the webinar. Dr. Shiv Tripathi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pandey, for your welcome as well as for introductory thoughts on 21 for 21 ideas and also suggesting some thoughts on that in that line. And as you mentioned that the time is for Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes. So I would request the organizer to keep me unmuted. So thank you, Mr. Pandey, for your nice welcome address and also introducing some of the initial thoughts regarding 21 for 21. As you mentioned that the time is for power of ideas, I would like to add to that it's the power of ideas and power of implementation of ideas. And as you mentioned that we need to look into totality of the economic development cycle, and if one initiative coming from one direction, it needs to be complemented from other sides as well. You mentioned about yoga, and then you mentioned example of how yoga teachers should be recruited. You mentioned about hygiene and hygiene workers. So that's a very good example, and that sets the theme for now to take it forward. And fortunately, we have with us as a chief guest a very eminent personality who needs no further introduction. Any day you turn any national paper, Financial Times, any magazine, and chances are you will come across an article or piece, thought-provoking piece from Mr. Gopal Krishna Agarwal. He, during last more than 4 decades, has contributed immensely, not only to economics and finance, but also to the areas which has long-term implication on the performance of economics and finance, including bribery, anti-corruption, and many such initiatives. Not to mention, since his participation in Satyagraha at the time of emergency during 1975, he has been contributing actively to the thought building in economic development of India. Now, not taking much of the time, it's my honor to invite our chief guest, Mr. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, to deliver inaugural address.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shiv Tripathi ji. I would first like to convey my sincere thanks to Indian Observer Post for giving me this opportunity to interact in such an important program where people from, as Omkareshwar Pandey ji has mentioned, that 21 universities are participating, and it will be a mega event where all will contribute to the thought process of economic development of the country. My good wishes for the new year 2021 to all of you. The session chair, Himachal Das Raju ji, Anup Mudgal ji, my co-panelists and other senior professors and panelists, I convey my best wishes for the coming year. I will briefly, as has been Mr. Omkareshwar Pandey had asked me that briefly I may convey some of the issues that the government think are important. Some of the development on the economic field that the government is taking initiative on, so that we can keep the ball rolling for today's discussion. And I'm sure that after listening to all of you, I'm taking notes of it. We will definitely be able to improve on the economic thought in the government. I'll definitely try my best to convey the good ideas directly, and after I will receive your report also, I can convey it further. Friends, at the onset, I'll just tell that pandemic had been a big challenge for India and global economy as well. Lot of segments found it difficult to survive in this pandemic, and uh, globally it is being lauded that India, though with poor health infrastructure, so did a remarkable job in this control of pandemic. And I will focus on the economic recovery. The second quarter was a very bad, that we had seen a contraction of more than 23.9. But the third quarter has, though it is still 7.7, it has seen contraction of 7.7, but it has improved by more than 64% from the second quarter. And all the reports currently are pointing out that the coming fourth quarter will be sufficiently good. And though we will end up around total negative growth of around 7 to 8%, but next year there will be a strong recovery, and we all have to contribute to them. It is not the government alone which can do. So some of the initiative that the government plans, I'll focus more on them, so that your contribution becomes more effective on in line with what the government thinks, and it becomes in sync with the new policies that we are planning. Two reports I'll mention, and then I'll proceed further. One is the monthly economic report with the Ministry of Finance gives. And the last December report I was seeing, every graph we see, every macroeconomic parameter, etc., is showing a sharp V-shaped recovery on every parameter. It went down after suddenly when the pandemic started. In the second quarter, it suddenly went down, and in the third quarter, it has moved up. So when we are talking of V-shaped recovery, we are very confident from the Ministry of Finance data, etc. I'll not go into much detail on individual data, but anybody can look into that. Report is quite exhaustive on various parameters. Second important thing is about the report which the RBI has come out yesterday. That is talking about many issues. That shows that the economic recovery will be fast, and we will see, they have talked about like this, that we will have a bright summer this year, and they are very hopeful that positive that the economic growth will go very fast in the coming quarter. Even if you look into the various data about production managers index, it is also for the last 3 quarters is showing a expansion in the manufacturing, and even this other data are also showing quite recovery. Even GDP collection for the last 3 months is more than 1 lakh crore. So that is one issue, that economic parameters are showing recovery. And what we have to do is, I think, in the academic and economic sectors, is build up certain narrations. We need to build up a narration and positive policy public debate about reforms. If we don't go for mega reforms now, after 1991, India has not seen major reforms, economic reforms, which can propel India to the becoming the economic superpower. We are talking that India is poised to become an economic superpower in the global arena. We have the fastest growing economy. We have a large population. We have a strong market, consumer market, etc. and but that will require a large reforms. So when I say that 1991 was a big reform, after that IBC and GST were two major reforms, but still there that time also land, labor and agriculture. These three important areas were left out of the reform process. That's very important that we understand that the government has to move for economic growth, to propel economic growth. These three areas require a major reform. Without these three areas, the growth will not propel at a fast pace. We tried in 2015 to come out with an amendment into the land reforms, but that time the public domain of public policy narration did not allow us to proceed for that. Even there was an issue with regard to federal structure because land is a state issue. So government thought that it will now let it be left to the states to do it. But now we have come out with agriculture reforms and labor reforms. These are very important issues. And the narration which is coming out in the public domain, academicians, economists, and people who are involved in public policy, government's request is that clear the narration, talk about reforms, make a positive attitude. Because what happens in the democracy sometimes is the people, whenever there is a reform undertaken, then the benefit of reforms comes with a time lag, and the benefits are spread over large sections of population, so it is spread on a thin basis. There is immediate impact on some of the segment, and they strongly come out, and we see the agitation which is being built. So people like us, we all need to build a positive narrative about in the public policy arena for reforms. Without going for big ticket reforms, Indian economy will not progress. So these land, labor, now labor is also, the codes have been passed. Rules will come out this month, and then the notification will come in April 2021. I am very sure that there will be another agitation. So before that, then people, it is in the public domain, everybody can discuss, talk about them. There had been big talk about bringing those reforms, but that time there may start another agitation. So we have to work on this. This is an important area that we as a policy makers require. Second thing is government is doing whatever about the resource constraint with regard to Atmanirbhar Bharat. What we were thinking, employment is a big issue for the Indian economy. Large population, young people entering into the working age limit, they need employment, and the government cannot provide employment jobs everybody to everyone through public this job market only. We need to depend more on entrepreneurship and self-employment. So this will come from the growth in the manufacturing sector. So I think manufacturing is another area where the government is focusing, which lagged focus over the last several decades, and therefore we see that the employment generation is less, and people shifting from agriculture are finding difficult to get their jobs. So self-entrepreneurship and employment entrepreneurship is area where government is working. For that, we need level playing field. Factors of production is an important area, because manufacturing sector cannot grow without a strong development into the factors of production. And land, I have talked something, but other than land, we are working on 5 policies, and we will welcome suggestions on those. Government at present is working on changing these policies. We are extensively engaged with stakeholders to discuss on these policies. Any suggestions on these policies are welcome. We will incorporate them, and we are going to tweak some of the policies. They are about the industrial policy. 1955 was the last industrial policy. After that, there were some amendment, but that same policy is continuing. So government is working on bringing out a new industrial policy. Along this industrial policy, where it will focus on creating level playing field for factors of production like power and other issues, etc. And creating land bank, cluster development, lot of things are there in the industrial policy which we are working on. Second thing is our industry is facing problem with about the logistic transportation policy. Our cost of transportation is very high. So we have put one policy in the public domain about the logistic policy. We have asked opinion on that. All further any suggestions on that are welcome. And government targets to reduce the cost of transportation by almost 40%. And that is a huge target that we want to achieve. It will come from improvement into infrastructure investment, rail, roadways, airways, ship, waterways, etc. Then nodal logistic centers, etc. Major problems, bridges, etc. are major initiative government is planning. That will have two benefits. One, it will reduce the cost of transportation, and second, it will create demand in the economy with infrastructure spend. Government has big target on infrastructure spend. So this is the second policy we will appreciate. Third is about the retail trade policy. There is no retail trade policy in India at present. We are working on that. The fourth is about the e-commerce policy. Though in 2019 there was a e-commerce policy draft where we had called for opinion. Then again, after revised policy we have put in public domain in 2020. E-commerce, we have seen that pandemic has created a good ecosystem for e-commerce, etc. India, with all its small businesses, can benefit out of it. So e-commerce is one issue where global players are also, lot of their demands are there, about their pressure is also there. So there also government is working on. And the last is the foreign trade policy. So these 5 policies all issue suggestion. Foreign trade policy has a block of 5 years. So 2021, there is a new foreign policy due, where bilateral trade and multilateral trade is also an important area which has to be dealt in with this. Why I'm saying is that sometimes people confuse about Atmanirbhar Bharat, that it is closing the Indian economy, closing all imports, increasing custom duty. Actually, this is not the whole objective of Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is strengthening Indian domestic manufacturing, inviting manufacturing global manufacturers to come to India, provide them level playing field, make Indian domestic industry competitive to the global arena, and integrate our manufacturing to regional and global supply chain. We are not going to close our economy. We want to open it, but first make our industries competitive, provide them level playing field with power, land, cost, etc., logistic cost. All these things have to be improved, labor reforms, agriculture reforms, then only they will become competitive, and then open them for bilateral and multilateral trade. That is our roadmap for manufacturing sector. So I think these are some of the points that I wanted to mention. Time allotted was 10 minutes. I think I have exceeded 2-3 points. I will just mention, because we are all of you are involved in this initiative, are from various universities, and it's a mega effort to connect 21 industries on this initiative, and this will definitely ये मंथन बहुत महत्वपूर्ण reforms हमारे पास suggestion में लाएंगे. And technical education, what the Prime Minister has focused is on about regional languages, and we have announced about the inclusion of regional languages in the technical education. But what the government is finding, that there are no resource for that. Neither books are available, nor teaching staff in the regional languages are available, particularly for technical education. This area also Prime Minister has a lot of focus, and I think you can all contribute into them. Skill development, stand-up initiative are very good. Young students from your universities should be encouraged to understand the website and the Atal Innovation Mission, everything extensively, gives lot of information on skill development, Startup India, Mudra Loan, etc. They should read them, get into them. Public sector undertakings are holding hackathons. They are in their websites putting up different issues with regard to their problems in the process problems and product problems. They are even giving financing, technical support, and even assuring markets for young people to come out with solutions. So these are all things given on the PSU's websites. Even the government has a lot of initiative, and we are seeing good unicorns and other things are developing. This area, young entrepreneurs should be encouraged. And the last thing that I would like to say is about the government is very much interested. We are working on social entrepreneurship. This I'm also talking because students, you are always interacting with students, is about the social entrepreneurship. India has a long trend of social welfare, public people taking up social welfare activity, and that is being done through NGOs and other things. But we want to integrate some kind of profit motive initiative so that the person involved into social entrepreneurship also has sufficient money for his own living and running a family. That integrating objective of profit making with the social goal and objective, and getting funds from getting fund sources either through cloud funding, or government has also come out with a SEBI has come out with a draft paper on social stock exchange. So this is an area where many people can contribute. How to develop social entrepreneurship, how to integrate social objective with the well-being and living of an individual, and how that can be integrated. So young with visionary people can work for with enthusiasm into creating big difference in the society. So these were some of the points that I wanted to put in my opening remark. If anything we can further discuss, it is my pleasure to hear all of you, and I would request all of you to create a proper narration for economic reforms, so that ill-informed narration does not become a constraint and hamper the economic growth in democracies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for in very brief time, like in very short time, you captured almost all the points, starting from indicating that how we are achieving now the wheat curve, and showing the promising path for Indian economy for future. Of course, if there is a strong leadership and a strong ecosystem governance system, then short-term shocks cannot do any harm, and we are sure that and confident that we will grow. You mentioned about promotion of entrepreneurship, and particularly social entrepreneurship and sustainable entrepreneurship, and I think that would be one of the area to look into future. Not only entrepreneurship just for promoting the business enterprises, but also as a mindset. Even if somebody is working in the organization or in some business or in government, people have to be entrepreneurial with mindset, and they have to act, because we have to take the economy to level next. As you mentioned that the reform that we started in 1990, we are moving now to next phase, which requires change in gear. And for changing the gear, we need to bring reform in labor, in other sectors, agriculture, and as you mentioned it. A very, very important issue that you highlighted, sir, that the regional language in VETA, vocational and technical education. And I think that the middle path in future, with the help of artificial intelligence and technology, once we integrate, there won't be dearth of content, and we would be moving forward with further initiatives with adaptation of technical education in English combined with regional language, and something of hybrid nature will something come up for the greater good. Thank you so much for your time, and not taking much of the time for keynote speech. It's my honor to invite Dr. Ram Pendas, a great scholar associated with Center for Regional Trade, also associated with World Watch China, has been state guest to United States and Indonesia on government invitation on various economic initiatives, worked in SARC and ASEAN, have a great number of publications to his credit. Now I invite Dr. Ram Upen Das for keynote speech.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
You are unmuted, sir. You start saying. Or maybe you have unmuted yourself, I think.
You can start. You are unmuted.
You try to increase the volume of the, or maybe audio is. Himangi, can you check?
Sir, Mr. Ramapendra Das is unmuted.
Hello. You are unmuted, sir. Acha, ek minute. Himangi, host says that he is saying that his box is saying that host is not allowing. Can you check that, Himangi?
Yes, sir, I am checking, but
I think that could be by error. The message is going, but it is showing unmuted. So, sir, you can start speaking because while you were talking, we could hear.
no, we are
Yeah,
not.
he's not audible. Icon is still unmuted. So can you rejoin, sir? Can you quickly rejoin after deactivating yourself, please?
Sir, can you just remove your earphones and reconnect them?
Yeah.
Please reconnect the earphones with this device.
Remove and reconnect. That's the problem with the technology.
So please rejoin
Just
them.
please unplug the earphone and reconnect. Till the time you can play the video for a break. I think he's rejoining.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. You are very much audible.
Yeah.
Yes, very much audible.
Yes, no, thank you. We also host many webinars, so we know this technicality. Many times it is both from the host and the recipient side. The technologies don't match, and that is where I would like to thank Indian Observer Post for having me in this very important program, and also to thank that a very important initiative that you have taken in terms of 20 ideas for the government, especially to be submitted to the Prime Minister of India in the year 2021. And your focus is rural India. And that is very important, as our chief guest Gopal Krishna Agarwal ji just mentioned, that this is something which is important for a country like India, which is doing very well in economic terms. We are integrating very seamlessly with the global markets in the last few decades, if you say. But most often than not, rural economies remain rural. And there is a saying in economics, those who do not, they have not, had formal education in economics would appreciate this, that poor are poor because they are poor. And rural economies are rural because they are rural. And developing countries are developing because they are developing, right? Now, why does this happen? And I think if we understand the context of this, that will definitely make this entire endeavor, Omkarishwarji, which you have launched in recent times, really very valuable. And the government would be looking up to such endeavors in future. Now, what is the problem? The problem is that because poor sections of the society and economy or the rural economy is marginalized, they have less per capita income, they are disconnected with the rest of the economy within a country. And therefore, if at all people residing in the rural sector have to improve their quality of life, they have to move from rural segment to the urban segment rather than urban segment coming to rural segment for the upliftment of the rural economy. And that is something which is very important to understand. This is a vicious circle that for long periods after independence, also India, you would find that the migration has always been from the rural to the urban, primarily because of this vicious circle, because rural economy was caught in the rurality, if I may use this term, and that rurality was the biggest constraint. So their underdevelopment was the bottleneck for their development. And the only way they could address this problem was towards solving their problems was to move from rural to urban. Now, in recent times, if you see, one single measure by the government of India of financial inclusion in terms of opening bank accounts has actually taken the urban and the government connected with the rural segment of the economy. You also know there are very famous statements that when private sector never used to go to the rural economy because they will not find it economically profitable venture. It was the responsibility of the state to reach out to the rural economy. But then only a small proportion used to reach to the rural economy of the total expenditure of the exchequer. Now, with financial inclusion and this direct benefit transfer mechanism enabled by the digital world and digital technology, today we are on the cusp of transforming the rural economy. And that is why your ideas focusing on the rural economy would be very crucial, and Prime Minister would be looking very curiously towards that. Now, one major idea in the realm of rural economy would be to harness the digital segment or digital development of uh, direct benefits transfer, along with the new schemes and expenses, even during the corona crisis times, to improve rural infrastructure so that the migration from rural to urban can be arrested. And at the same time, we should also be in a position to provide the social infrastructure in the rural areas itself, so that people don't have to go to urban areas for education, for health, for cinema, or for going to a shopping center. Therefore, the one idea is to urbanize the rural segment without adversely affecting the rural economy as such. So the landscape and the rural, farming and non-farming opportunities in terms of economic employment should remain. But at the same time, some degree of, urban content will have to be there in rural economies. And that is where another idea, which is already, the government is working on, and again, your ideas will be very important, is we are talking about smart cities, but the concept of smart villages, where the rural economy is connected not only to the urban centers within India, but also connected through trade in goods, services, and other areas with the international economy. And as Gopal Krishna Agarwal ji said, that Atmanirbhar Bharat means our rural economy should become Atmanirbhar. And that is where one district, one product program, or one district, one service program for the global market would become very important and very crucial, whereby the digital infrastructure connecting the rural economy with the urban, having smart villages concept, galvanized on a pan-Asia basis and integrated to the international market would be very crucial. Two final points on ideas itself. We need ideas, but we need ideas to implement. We need to know why an idea is not implemented, and we have to crack that with idea. So that is one segment of my comment on idea itself. And my final comment is that we need to see interlinkages across ideas. So say if you have 21 ideas, we will have to see how many of them have to be further disaggregated and how many of them have to be further integrated, and maybe a cluster based approach of ideas will be important. Thank you so much for your kind attention, and sorry for this technical glitch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your very short, very focused, and very powerful keynote speech, highlighting and capturing all the major points and connecting with what our chief guest mentioned in previous address. Because the moment you mentioned connecting the rural value chain to global value chain, that requires the entrepreneurship development at all levels, and that only can help in promoting the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Thank you very much for linking this issue and connecting rural to urban. And we are confident that once this happens, given the government's priority and focus areas and policies of strengthening the rural value chains, all other sectors would evolve around, whether it is education, health, or it is digital economy. Everything will evolve as a supporting factor to support the rural value chain to integrate with the global value chain. Thank you so much for this thought. And now, not taking much of the time, I would take this opportunity to invite our guest of honor for this session, Ambassador Anup Mudgalji, who has a very rich experience in international diplomacy, as well as a scholar of blue economy. He has served many government committees in Asian region in relation with Russia, with the NAFTA committee, and not to mention there are so many things to his credit. So not the Ambassador Mudgal, it's my honor to invite you for the talk.
Thank you so much. Let me thank the host organizers for giving me this opportunity. It was really, let me compliment Gopalji. You really brought in so much in a very, very brief presentation. I think after your presentation, not much is left to be covered. So what I will do, I will not repeat what has already been said by the earlier speakers. I would rather take you to the mega trends the world is going through or is likely to go through, especially in the light of the crisis that world economy, the systems have faced because of COVID-19. In fact, I am a great believer in globalization. And as a result, I was a bit disturbed, I should say, or I was not very happy with the recent arguments in terms of sending a message, as Gopalji, you mentioned the narration. We were getting this impression that probably the globalization has outlived its shelf life, and we would be going back to the protectionism and all that stuff. And in the same context, Gopalji, people were misunderstanding the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat. They thought we were going to erect barriers, and we are going back to the old system of import substitution for finding internal solutions. I'm happy that you clarified this position, that this is not the whole idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat. You see, when I hear people saying, we are heading for deglobalization, I think this is an exaggeration of the assessment. My view is that we are not at all heading for deglobalization, because the globalization is very deeply embedded. Sometimes we confuse the term globalization purely with the trade relationship. Globalization is not only trading relationship. It's not only the investment relationship. Globalization is a much wider platform. And even if, for example, we talk about, for example, supply chains, we talk about their resilience, we talk about their onshoring, we talk about their consolidation, we talk about their reforms and all that stuff. But yes, there will be some, yes, I think there is some issue there. There will be some reforms and readjustment of the global supply chains or global value chains, as we call, but they are not going away. They would stay there. We'll have to probably reform them a bit, make them more resilient, make them more predictable, make them more result-oriented, rather than thinking of that the globalization is going away. Other aspects of globalization, for example, technology. Is technology globalization going away? The answer is no. We have the global commons. For example, addressing the issue of underdevelopment, poverty, security, maritime security. Are these challenges going to go away? No, they will always remain global. So therefore, I think we have to debunk this whole narration that the world is heading into what is called deglobalization. Globalization is there to stay, and I wish it stays, in fact, because if we go into the history of globalization, all countries in their own manner have benefited from globalization, and they will continue to benefit from that. We only need to make globalization more fair, just, and equitable. So this is one aspect which I thought I should clarify. As for my thoughts, the process of globalization will stay there, and we have to position ourselves so that we remain an important player in that globalization process. Then, in fact, the other narration I see, which is related to deglobalization, people say, oh, we are heading for what is called Cold War II. Again, I think this is an exaggeration of a sort. There is a situation where the emerging economies, or those which are more emerged than the emerging, are seeking their rightful place in the global order. Now, that is nothing new. We have seen that in the history, how the emerging powers seek their rightful place in the global order. And I would say we should not exaggerate that situation into coming to this conclusion that we are heading for Cold War II. Now, go back to the Cold War period, just to explain why I believe so. Even when we had Cold War I, did everybody agree with that? The answer is no. There was a large chunk of countries, over 100 countries, which simply did not agree with the idea of Cold War. But their importance in the global order, in terms of their size of the economy, in terms of the technology power, in terms of their financial powers, it was very, very small. I'm talking about, say, most of the members of the non-aligned movement. But today, count those countries which did not have that major role to play in those days. Today, can you imagine that any two powers would be able to go into some kind of a cold war situation, I am sure the world will not accept re-emergence of Cold War or Cold War II. Therefore, I think the global order, the global cooperation will continue, and India needs to position itself in the emerging global, the revised global order, where I am sure India can play a much bigger and much greater role. Why? Because we have certain advantages. We have certain given advantages, as Gopalji mentioned. We are a very large market, in fact. Can any economy worth its salt ignore a market of Indian size? The answer is no. Then the Indian philosophy, we call it, say, you call it democracy, you call it pluralism, you call it tolerance, you call it peace, whatever you want to call it, non-violence and all that stuff. Now, we are a country which is open to any ideas. In our system, there is nothing called an adverse idea. It's an idea. We examine those ideas. We have the capacity to examine those ideas on merit. And as a result, I think I have lived all my life negotiating with foreign partners. They understand the strength of India, that India can examine an idea with more open-mindedness than many other partners. Then, for example, we always say our creativity, our technology process. While there, of course, I have some suggestions that we have not really kind of taken advantage of that inherent strength that India has. Indians are extremely skillful people. They're very creative, but somehow we have not been able to channel that creative energy into creating systems. Now we have the components of a very creative ecosystem, but we have not been able to put together those components into creating a creative ecosystem. Now I think, Gopalji, please, let's pay attention to creating creative ecosystems. We have a lot of creativity in isolation, in silos, but those creativities, when we put together, we are not able to create a creative system, right? Ecosystem, as we call it. Most of the issues Gopalji mentioned, at the end of the day, they will require somebody to invest. Now, when I say invest, I don't only mean money. You don't only have to invest money. You have to invest technology. You have to invest ideas. You have to invest in skills. You have to invest in regulation. You have to invest in ease of doing business. You have to invest in logistics. Now, unless we ask the investor, let's ask, are you investing? I'm not only talking about domestic investors, I'm talking also about foreign investors, because I've dealt with them all my life. And investors simply will ask you 3 simple questions. If you are able to answer those questions, they will open their purse and invest. If you're not able to answer those questions, they would not do it. Number 1 question they ask is that, where is the scope for investment? Gopalji, let me tell you, India has a brilliant case, positive case for scope of investment. We have such diverse economy. You can choose the place of your liking and invest there. It could be high technology, it could be middle technology, it could be low technology, it could be jugaad, it could be rural, it could be semi-rural, it could be urban. Now, because of the diversity of our economy, it offers that scope. The second is scale. I have already mentioned, because of our market size, the scale is automatically there. And then they say, do you have the enabling environment for my investment to grow? Now, nobody invests for stagnation. They invest for growth. Can it grow? Do I have the enabling ecosystem for growth? We definitely have the basics of wonderful growth, but we need to really create a functional ecosystem of sustainable growth. Then the last question they ask is that, tell me, is my investment and growth secure? Nobody will want to invest and then after 10 years say, all right, your money is my money now. So you have no right over that money, right? So can we secure the investment and growth? And that is, Gopalji, what is ease of doing business. Can we make doing business easy and secure? Because at the end of the day, the purpose is reduce the cost, improve the quality. If you're not able to reduce the cost and improve quality, we may do whatever we do. Nobody will buy our product. People buy products not for any ideology or any cultural affection or goodwill. They buy products for their good quality and lower prices. If we are able to crack that objective, improve quality, reduce cost, nobody can stop us from becoming, as you said, the economic superpower, right? You see, when you talk about economic superpower, it's not only the aggregate cumulative size of the economy. It is the quality of that economy. It is the resilience of that economy. It is the future of that economy. I think if we are able to do that, and especially in the kind of technology we are heading into, India has tremendous advantage. Let's utilize that advantage and put India ahead of the curve. The pandemic has opened an opportunity which can make a generational shift in the manner we do economy, sir. Let's do it. Let's not miss this opportunity. Take advantage of this. We need a positive, conducive, complete ecosystem. The silos approach is not going to get us there. Let's look at the totality and plug those gaps, answer those problems and questions, and carry the entire system forward. The Indian investor and the foreign investor, they are really looking forward to this opportunity, and we should not really miss on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mudgal, for wonderful thoughts on starting with the globalization, deglobalization, or realignment, and then coming to the issue of seeking power in new world order when there are two emerging schools. One is saying continue with competition, another is saying no, cooperation is the way forward. And thank you so much for linking the entrepreneurship, technical education, and integration of the value chain, because for Atmanirbhar Bharat, that's essential. And I think that's the way forward. Thank you very much for your guiding thoughts and your time. Now, it's my pleasure to invite my colleague at Humanistic Management Network, who brings a very different perspective to economy and finance. Professor Ernst Humanistic Management Network at Switzerland, and we have been working for more than decades on this initiative, which started from St. Gallen and then has taken root to Geneva, and now in many countries worldwide, we have chapters. Professor Ernst approaches the economic development from the human dignity perspective. And this has become very, very relevant today in the post-COVID time, when the world is looking at the alternative ways to cooperate and create synergies rather than looking into the conventional competition, which has created chaotic effects worldwide. So, not taking much of the time, it's my pleasure to invite my colleague, Dr. Ernst Kimakowicz, founder of Humanistic Management Network. Unmute. Okay. Himangi ji, can you? Yeah.
Thank you. Now I am. I wasn't able to unmute myself. Sorry for that. Well, thank you so much for the invitation and your kind words of introduction, Professor Shiv. Thank you to the Indian Observer Post for having me here today. It's a great honor and pleasure. And this is one of the situations where the previous speakers have said so much and so rich in content that I've, thrown away most of the points that I wanted to present, because I feel a need to respond to what I've heard from the humanistic management perspective and reflect a little on those issues. Starting first with globalization, where I think in the development context, yes, we are beyond the question of is globalization good or not. I think it is beneficial. I think it is a question of how we organize it, in what spirit do we globalize. It's a question of how, not if. Now, on this question, I think there's two main distinctions I would like to make, and one is the globalization in the spirit of efficiency, and the other in the spirit of strengths. And I think if we're viewing globalization only as a way for gaining efficiency increases, we see in the pandemic currently very clearly that creates fragility. We cannot be hyper efficient and resilient at the same time. So there are trade-offs to be had. On the other hand, if we're looking at globalization as a process of division of labor in order to let our strengths come to play, then I think we have much to gain. And so I think globalization, yes, we should embrace it. There's nothing inherently wrong with globalization, but there are things where we need to look in what spirit do we globalize, how do we organize globalization. And there I strongly believe that we need to view it more from the position of how can we bring individual strengths to play, rather than only looking at what efficiency gains are to be had. On the Cold War, just very quickly, I fully agree that Cold War, I don't know if we'll enter one or not, but I think there's a distinction to be made between a bipolar world and a Cold War. And I think there are strong indications that we are entering a bipolar world again, but that does not need to lead to having a second Cold War. So the times where we have one single global superpower that hegemoniously can have a huge impact on the rest of the world, these times are gone. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe not. I'm undecided there. But I think it is important to see that a bipolar world, yes, I think is likely to emerge. But that does not need to be, or does not need to lead into a second Cold War. Which leads me to the next point, which is that it's been said in various contexts now that unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures and reforms. And there I think, and now we're drawing closer to my core topic of humanistic management and development in the context of humanistic management. Reforms in what spirit, I would ask? Yes, we can have reforms, we need to have reforms. Unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. But what is the spirit in which these reforms are formulated? With which mental models are we approaching these reforms? Grounded in what attitudes are we looking at these reforms? And there, I think the fundamental shift that will be beneficial to future development and to rural development efforts is that we are shifting paradigmatically to viewing growth, economic growth, as a means and not as an end in itself. And I think that is one of the main paradigmatic shifts in development thinking that has been introduced by Nobel laureate Amartya Sen on his capabilities approach, where his starting point was very interestingly and very telling in the mid-1980s already, where he listed 5 countries, which were Mexico, Brazil, Sri Lanka, China, and India, and he listed them by per capita GDP. And then he had the ranking. I just said Mexico was highest, then Brazil, then Sri Lanka, then India, then China, and then India, as ranked per GDP. But then he added to this ranking life expectancy. He added to this ranking adult literacy. He added to this ranking higher education ratio. He added to the ranking infant mortality. So he added a whole series of dimensions that surely are very relevant for development, that surely are extremely important for people to live a life they have reason for embracing, to live a life they want to be living. And he found no correlation to the GDP ranking. He found that higher GDP does not automatically translate to higher adult literacy. He found that higher GDP does not automatically translate to longer life expectancy. He found it does not automatically translate to lower infant mortality, and so on. So I think what we need in terms of making sure that the reforms, that the unprecedented measures, that the way we approach globalization, the way we are dealing with a new setup of an emerging bipolar world of strong second powers coming up, India being one of them, that we are able to use these developments in a productive and meaningful way for rural development and for development more generally, is that we go through this fundamental paradigmatic shift of viewing economic growth not as an end in itself, but as a means. And the means is to allow people to live dignified lives, to allow or to embrace and support sustainable livelihoods. Job creation had been mentioned. So how do we use, is GDP growth automatically leading to creating sustainable livelihoods? No, it doesn't. So the aim is sustainable livelihoods and not growth per se. Growth is a tool. Growth is an instrument that in some cases may be necessary, in some cases not. Where it is necessary, we need to embrace it, we need to promote it, but we also always need to bear in mind what it is that we want to achieve with this growth. Because if we're looking at growth in itself, there's no benefit in growth in itself unless it translates to more people living more dignified lives, having more sustainable livelihoods. The benefit of economic growth in itself is limited. And that brings me to two more points that I want to mention. One, I found very interesting, the urbanization question, and saying we need to urbanize the rural, basically, or bring characteristics of urbanization to the rural. For that, I think technology plays a vital role. If we're looking what is fundamentally different in an urban environment, then it is a large amount of people socially interacting directly with each other. And now technology can bring that to the rural areas, as we are seeing just right now. I mean, we are not all sitting together. We're all in different places, yet we are collaborating and we're working together. So what the speaker has said on let's urbanize the rural, I think technology has to play a vital role there, and I see it tremendously beneficial. And we're just, demonstrating by this very meeting that the power of technology is there. And lastly, let me finish with the point on social entrepreneurship, which I find is crucial and very, very relevant. And because I've been working quite a bit on social entrepreneurship, so I want to have a few points there. First of all, the term I think is great, and it embraces something that we should call for. At the same time, I sometimes wonder if we're having these social entrepreneurs and social enterprises, what does that mean for the rest of the economy? What is the purpose of business if not social? So the question there is, should not every business be a social enterprise? I mean, if we're saying some businesses are social enterprises, what are the rest of them? Anti-social enterprises? I mean, the very reason of entrepreneurial activity, the very reason why we as society ought to embrace successful private sector actors is because of their legitimacy through providing societal benefit. That is why we should embrace a business organization. So in that sense, I think the ultimate aim is that every business organization to some degree is a social enterprise. That's the reason of being for a business organization, is the contribution it makes to society at large. Secondly, and that will be my last point on the social entrepreneurship side, social enterprises have got each entrepreneurship, each business needs investment. So the flip side of the coin of a successful enterprise are successful investors. And we need to be aware that social enterprises are oftentimes excluded from traditional venture funding. And because they pursue different aims. If I go to a traditional venture investment firm, to a venture capitalist, and I say, listen, I have this fantastic business idea, and my goal is to improve people's lives. Yeah, you know, I want to earn some profit. I want to do it in a profitable way, but maximizing my return, my financial return, is not the aim of this organization. And most venture capitalists are going to turn you away. So social enterprises to flourish are having a different mental model. They're based on a different reason of being compared to many traditional enterprises, and therefore they need a different breed of investors also, and these are called impact investors. So the flip side of successful, or the necessity for successful social enterprise sector are flourishing impact investing scene is an ecosystem of investors that are impact oriented. And I don't think you will gain a successful and broad-based social entrepreneurship scene without having the corresponding impact investing ecosystem. So I think it is necessary to look at both of those sides, because growth in social enterprises, success in social enterprises is depending on having a different breed of investors as they are excluded from traditional venture financing in many ways. So with that, let me summarize at least some of the main points. Or the main point from my view here is that to materialize the rural development benefits as you are presenting them so very eloquently and rightly in the previous talks, I think is a shift in the mental model, that we are clear about seeing economic growth as a means and not as an end in itself. And the end ought to be sustainable livelihoods for more people, be it rural or urban, but sustainable livelihoods, people living a life in dignity, people living a life that they have reason to embrace, should be the goal of development efforts, which is of course something where from the business sector, we at the Humanistic Management Network are working relentlessly towards. And in that sense, let's view the current pandemic, the challenges that we're faced with, as an opportunity to implement some of those changes and to ensure that reforms that will need to come now are actually beneficial in a spirit of creating sustainable livelihoods and supporting people in living a life in dignity and self-determination. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ernst. And you have also already summarized your talk. So you mentioned that it's about not only the economic growth, but looking at economic development as a means to achieve the quality of life indicators and to balance that. So that's true. And we have seen that blind race towards maximizing the numbers and trying to be on the top of the chart in terms of GDP has created ill effects on the different side. And there have been many such practices which are not desirable for the sustainable human livelihood and existence. So thank you so much. And of course, you mentioned about the social entrepreneurship that requires impact entrepreneurs to be promoted, impact investors to be promoted. And I think that that is the need of the hour. So thank you for your wonderful thoughts. And now it's my pleasure to invite a very, very distinguished thought leader, Mr. Puran Chand Pandey, who has worked with the Global Compact Network in India. He brought a lot of reforms there. He created many sustainable development initiatives. In fact, before the Sustainable Development Goals were launched, he was involved in a number of initiatives at UN, in multilateral talks, in many of the initiatives. He has also served the Dialogue of Civilization in Berlin, and he represents Climate Change Scorecard, USA, his country representative. So, Mr. Puran Chand Pandey, it's my pleasure to invite you for your thoughts. Bangiji, I think Puranji is mute.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are now.
Thank you very much, Sue, for your very kind introduction. And I'm also very thankful to Indian Observer Post, in particular to Onkar Sarji, for inviting me to this very, very timely dialogue, if I can say, on something which is very intrinsic, not only to economic development, but also to build a narrative and a narration which is not only for domestic audience, but also a narrative which is going to be out more in the public domain, which is outside India as well. So we have got to look at both the sides in a very rational way. And I would also begin by saying that rural India, which is the theme of today's dialogue, is very, very pertinent. And I, for one, have always held on to the belief, and rightly so, and I have proven right as well, given this pandemic which panned out and tried to disrupt societies and communities and countries across the global south and the global north. But this has also brought many new openings and opportunities, and also how we need to put a reset to our conduct, our behavior, how we traded with people, both within the country and also outside. And then there is a very clear-cut emergence of a new global order. So this rural theme of today's dialogue and conversation is not really confined to a mere debate, but this is quite deeper, both in its content and the value, which we need to really look at, resolve some challenges which we have, and try to see as to how can we really use this COVID-19, especially post-COVID-19, in a way that we are really going to not only build a narrative, which is narrative per se, but a narrative which is very compelling narrative for the new global order, which is very fast shaping, and that is shaping in ways that is unprecedented, both on a scale and also on impact. So let me demystify a few things, and also with the benefit of the hindsight of so many good speakers who have spoken so well about trade and globalization and a new world order and the place of India in all of that, which is very, very important. So where do we really find the place of India in the new emerging global order? And let me say, to begin with, that India has always been an agrarian society. Even as per 2019 statistics of the World Bank, India still has more than 65% of its people living in rural areas. To be very precise, it is 65.53%. And this is the World Bank report 2019. So much has changed. We all, left our villages, we came to urban centers, we studied, we graduated, post-graduated, made a good life for ourselves. But the whole rhythm and the root that we have is very deeply embedded into our values, our culture, our community, and also the rural backbone of the economy from which many of us came from. At least I, for one, came from a rural backdrop in the background. And I could really, as a child and while growing up, I could know that, there's nothing better than my own village. However, my grandfather told my father to go out and study and have the best facilities in terms of medical care. So the two things which came to my learning as a child was that everything else is very fine, but two things in the village system, even then and even now, continue to be missing. And these were two things. One, that we didn't really have a very good school to go to, and we didn't really have, good health care. So if somebody fell ill, it could be very difficult during those days. And the situation has changed quite a lot. And there are many people who have begun to realize that the rural backbone of our economy is very much needed, because we still have more than 65% of the people living in the villages. And we need to really develop systems and processes and community infrastructure in terms of, schools and hospitals, so that people are secure in terms of pursuing the dreams of at least educating themselves and also getting protected in case something goes wrong health-wise. So rural part of India has been there and will continue to be there for a very, very long time. And this 65+% is not really going to go down, because I was also referring to global statistics, which says that over the period of 2019 and 2020, villages have attracted more than 1% of the people compared to the previous years. So rural economy, in a way, is going to linger on, remain on the ground, continue to thrive, and also keep on feeding all of us, because we get our food grains that we eat mostly from farmers who are predominantly in rural areas. Having said it, what do we really need to be doing now in order to further lend to the credence to the fact that, rural economy is very important. This is where most of us live in. They're the backbone of our food. And we cannot really imagine India without the rural economy. If that is the given, what do we really need to be doing? There are three things which I would like to concentrate on. The first one is, which has also been alluded to by previous speakers, but let me say it in a simpler fashion. That simpler fashion is that we need to really see to it what has been amiss in our rural economy, which, as I said, is very predominant, and we cannot really imagine our country without a very robust rural system, so to say. So what has really gone, not so well? Three things, as I said. First one is income. Income as an instrument of economic and political thinking is very, very important. Unless we have income which can help us gain the ground and be there on the ground, we will find it very hard for so many millions of people in our country to be able to stand and continue to thrive. So income is very, very important. And while agriculture is the mainstay of rural economy, we need to somehow consider, both at human level and also at the policy level, as to how do we really open more and better opportunities to farmers where we can put some extra disposable income, which is non-agricultural income, which is very, very important. So this whole idea of income in a passing phase is very, very important. If there is not enough income or less income, we will not have saving, which is another very important instrument of development and growth. And income and saving together will determine as to how much of investment is going to come. And as I said in the beginning, we have more than 65% of our people living in rural areas. So if there is less income, there's going to be less saving. And if these two things are on the lower end, we're not really going to have the investment. And then in economics, there is this notion of equilibrium. And this equilibrium between income, saving, and investment is very, very critical. For any economy, leave aside Indian economy, any economy which has grown and has been thriving, they have done so on the strength of putting more income in the hands of people. More income in the hands of the people will determine that we are going to get greater or more saving. So more income, more saving will mean more investment, which is probably the starting point for any economy like ours, which is agrarian and very large. So India is a very big country, like a continent. We have more than 65% of the people still living in the rural areas. So we need to both, as I said, at human level and also at the policy level, that we ensure that there is more income that will result into more savings, and more income and more saving into more investment. And I think we cannot really give a pass to, in this context and backdrop, give a pass to rural economy, which is very big, has many people depend on it. And we all, even in urban areas, if there's a bad crop, for example, we're all going to get into a very bad inflationary process where our incomes will be eaten into by the inflation which we are going to have. So going back to income, saving and investment, where interest rates are very, very important. So if there is an equilibrium of sorts, I mean, there is no ideal situation in economics. I mean, we all know it. But income, saving, and investment will have a very interdependent role where the interest rates will become very vital. So that is something which is very, very important for us to understand. So if we are a $3 trillion economy today, at least half of that, both by direct and indirect calculation, is going to be contributed to our economy. Agriculture, by and large, has been contributing to our growth. So if we are 6%, 8%, 10%, at least half of that, both by direct and indirect calculation, is going to be contributed by rural India. So rural India is very, very important. Now, how do we really give a narrative to the world at large so that they can look at rural area in India from a very different mindset altogether? And that mindset is very simple. And then there are case studies, good practices that we can also look at. As some of the speakers were saying that, how do we really cut on poverty, income inequality, have more people covered with the social protection and so on and so forth. I think rural India is the one place which is going to ensure most of those things. And if we were to really take rural India out of the whole calculation, then the whole thing is going to really fall through. And then I will really stop by saying two very quick points. Point number one is, as I said, that how do you really give a new narration to rural India that we have, which is very vibrant, very dynamic, contributes very much to our overall GDP, which is, of course, one of the ways in which we calculate our progress year-on-year basis. I mean, if I were to really quickly go back to Europe, Europe has been doing something good that we can look at in a passing phase, where they have begun to identify rural areas and try to give a lot of incentives to companies, to people, those who had money and wanted to invest. So if in Europe, you want to really take your company from Berlin or from, Tallinn to one of the rural areas, government is really going to give you very, very extraordinary, in certain cases, incentives. So how do we really, in a passing phase, how do we really acknowledge the strength of our rural economy and try to see to it as to how can we really put incentives on the top of what we have, which we can offer to investors in case they are ready to come to rural areas where they will not only put the money in, but they will also give ready jobs to millions of youth, which is, the need of the hour. So we really need to figure out how do we really try and incentivize people moving in the reverse gear from urban areas to rural areas with a lot of topped up gains and incentives and support system and so on and so on and forth. That is something which I would like to very forcefully say that the time for India has come when it needs not only to improve on its ease of doing business, but also give out, more soaps to people in case they are willing to move from urban centers to rural areas. So that is one thing which is very, very important. COVID-19 finally has also exposed vulnerabilities everywhere, including here in India. And I would like to really propose as a policy issue that around the world, and when I say around the world, I also mean developed and developing economies both, have been trying to experiment on a system or an idea which is called as universal basic income. I have worked on this area quite in an applied way, and I would really like to suggest that we should, along with the government and both at the sub-regional and national level, we must work with the government and try and see to it that the government, whatever it has been spending on social protection of the people through a variety of schemes, which are social schemes, including Kisan scheme of the PM, how can we really put it together and try and give some extra money in the hands of the people, which they will not only spend on improving their lives, but also you spend that money whereby we will be able to generate greater consumption, leading to greater demand, and take the economy to a level whereby we are growing not less than 8 to 10%. And Britain is looking at it. They have been looking at it from a concept called universal credit. China has been looking at it very closely, and they are already at 2.3% ahead of every major economy. And then we have Global South in Tanzania and Kenya, including in the US and Canada. This universal basic income in different formats is being experimented by the governments. So I would really like to stop here and say that we really need to give a different spin to our rural economy, to our rural people, generating more income, and trying to build a narrative whereby we have the reverse migration, which COVID-19 has shown us, beyond anybody's doubt, that many of us went to our villages to be with our own people. Many of us came back and now we are back. But I think the time is there for us to consider our rural economy from a new paradigm and see to it as to how can we really create incentives, put more of ease of doing business there, and tell the investors that if you come to our rural areas, you have a lot more to gain than lose anything out in the process. So I would say that we have got to go beyond the ease of doing business and try and incentivize anybody and everybody who would like to really move from urban and semi-urban areas down to the rural areas, provided we can retrofit our rural economy from basic facilities and basic backgrounds, which really make people, more and more people moving from semi and urban areas down to the rural areas. I would like to thank IOP once again for giving me this opportunity to be able to put my some thoughts, and I'll be very happy to write something and give back and see to it if we can really work together on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Puranji, for particularly highlighting the implementation related issues for the rural development, that how we can support it's not only the plans and policies, but what areas we need to strengthen in if we really want to develop the rural economy, and also highlighting the issue of universal basic income, where you mentioned about Global South and how we can look into this and how we can initiate a number of things in that direction. So thank you very much for your thoughts. And now we have another very distinguished scholar of international economics and trade, Professor Arpita Mukherjee, who works with the Indian Council for International Economic Research. And she has more than 25 years of experience in research in international trade and economic issues. So not taking much of the time, I would like to invite Professor Arpita Mukherjee for sharing the views.
Thank you very much for inviting this and for giving me an opportunity to present before this august speakers. I have been hearing all of you with great interest, and I must say that I had written down something, but I would build upon what is said today and taking it forward to the Prime Minister. Bringing forth the discussions that was I would say the pillars of the discussion laid down by Gopalji. He spoke about the manufacturing and agricultural sector. Yes, services contribution to the GDP was well noted, and services was leading the GDP growth in the past. But with COVID-19, a number of service sectors have suffered. And although we did a services-led growth, it was largely a technology service that in India where we excelled. We haven't done well in transport, logistics. So I think the current focus on infrastructure, transport and logistics needs to be carried out as a key point for as one of the 21 points, like cost of power and reducing the logistic cost, reducing the cost of power, logistics, and enhancing the transport system and connectivity. Using these kind of services, focusing on these services, along with what the new farm law tried to do is to have a more direct sourcing from the farmer, connecting it, but that requires some kind of a reform at the level of the private sector also. But if we do farm reform, the private sector would not necessarily invest for getting a foreign investment, if we at all need it or think it is useful for this sector, there has to be a level playing field within the private sector, large farms, through a more structured retail policy and a more structured e-commerce policy. Today, we do not allow inventory-based models. So if you are sourcing perishable produce, the produce may get wasted in the supply chain if you have a marketplace-based model. So how do we really work out our regulations and match them with the farm bill and others that are in place? So what we need to go forward is to bring a regulatory alignment to encourage private sector to invest. That leads me to put in a question before you. If agriculture is not taxed, if there are not major barriers, as you can see, many states were open, many states have allowed private sector to set up mandi, why are we not getting private investment in this sector? So will subsidy along bring investment? And we actually did some studies because we were looking into some schemes. We have, central schemes, state schemes. And if you look at the schemes in agriculture, we have over 50, 60 schemes. And some schemes people are not using, some they are using. So we also need to prune down and understand what subsidy is going to work. and what subsidy is not working. So what we need to design is something what I always call a WTO smart and compliant subsidy that people would like to take, no, not, and that requires us to do much more pruning down of the existing subsidies list to a much focused list of subsidies. Third is, India is a larger producer of food, and today we are in a time when we talk about from food security to nutrition security, because we have enough of rice and wheat, and we are talking about diversifying the baskets. Now, how do you diversify the basket? That is an area which needs incentive. Let me give you an example that we give so much incentives. We subsidize chemical fertilizer, but there is no incentive for third-party organic produce, which is in a high demand globally and which can lead to doubling of farmer income. So we need to have a targeted subsidies to enable our farmers to do value add and change their crop diversification, go in for sustainable business practices. India is also one of the major exporters of agricultural produce, but over time we are losing our market share to Vietnam, Cambodia and other countries because we are not able to meet the quality standards of some key markets like the European Union and the US. Now, instead of saying that they are very difficult and things like that, we need to look, why are we losing our market share to Vietnam, Cambodia, African countries? They are also developing countries, and they have invested a lot on product quality, nutrition, and sustainable agricultural practice. And that is something where we need to think about as we move into a point for the Prime Minister to take over. But these are all there. It is just we need to diversify the focus from export to quality and standards of the export, and meeting the quality and standards of the export. And maybe we should do pilot projects. You select a cluster which grows a particular type of spice or a produce, work with the farmers there in a more collaborative FBO kind of a model, put in the quality standards, and then do a brand building. So what we are doing is we are developing value chains within the village and districts, and then connects this village and district, identify products, identify village, identify districts, develop your value chains, and then connect them to first to the state, local markets, and then to pan-India market, and then abroad. So you make your industry business ready. And and in doing so, we will realize today that at the moment we are major exporters of raw materials and importers of finished good. And what we aim to do as a part of this Atmanirbharta is to actually have more and more value addition in India. And that means the small and medium farmers can, through their cooperatives, maybe linked to small and medium manufacturers through some of a cooperative or their own models of getting together under a cluster-based approach system. So we need to look into systems which connect many small players in one sector with many small players in another sector, so that the players themselves join together to grow big. Many of the ASEAN countries have tried these initiatives very successfully in their small food parks, and they have been successful, and these can be replicated in India. I'm very interested in the concept of alternative livelihood. I do think that, the migrant labor crisis in COVID-19 really shows the, the plight of the people, of the landless workers. And if we are able to do value addition in the agriculture, which I last mentioned just now about small clustered based approach, is actually something which I called an alternative livelihood and a more decent job. When you are able to give some value addition in agriculture at the farm level, automatically the income increase. When the farmer income increase, his full family benefits. There is a higher level of education, health. Coupled with this, there is need for more investment in product traceability and product traceability and mapping, and that is where the technology comes in. When we talk about technology of farmers, as of now, India has many successful examples when knowledge has been shared to the farm level, but India has very few examples where technology has been collecting the product traceability data, standard data, and if there is an issue, you are able to solve it. The biggest example of this is bird flu. When you have an incidence of a disease, It cannot be spreading like, you know, you should be able to actually quarantine and mitigate. And that is why you need to have product traceability implemented in agriculture. The same problem we had with plant-based diseases, also pest in mango and everything, the products being banned abroad, is because we are not able to isolate and provide a solution instantaneously. And that is something that we need to move forward as we talk about taking this country forward. Interestingly, India has done marvelous within the COVID time in terms of diversification of its production. From nowhere, we started producing PPE kits. So, you know, we have an entrepreneurship ability and we can do. But this PPE kit is now overproduced and cannot be exported. So now we have to make them exportable. So I can be very good in production, but there should be a buyer to buy my product. And therefore, we have to go in for a buyer and seller linkages. I am also, you know, very much in favor of Ayurveda, and I am very much in favor of yoga and traditional medicine. And I think that they are nowhere less than Chinese medicines. But like the China has taken its Chinese medicine to the WHO and made it almost a globally acclaimed product, we need to move to that with our Ayurveda. And, you know, we need to define yoga so that what kind of yoga are we talking about in international platform, formalize these skills of the Ayurveda doctor, yoga doctor, so that these become a part of India's exports to rest of the world. I think I will stop here and I will come back to you with two thought processes that three areas where India needs to look into and intervene is, you know, identify your vulnerable communities. Your vulnerable communities are today women, SMEs, youth, and they have one certain common elements of vulnerability. And these are digital financial inclusion, or more specifically financial inclusion. You have not been able to do your SME inclusion. May
I request Professor Mukherjee to summarize, please?
Yeah, so if we are looking at this digital financial inclusion and the lower cost of borrowing, that is very important. People, you know, while we talk about subsidies now, we are doing a survey. Most people have said, 95% of my survey team has said, we don't need subsidies if we have lower cost of borrowing, lower power cost, and lower logistic cost. Summarized.
Thank you so much, and also particularly for highlighting the issue of that we must learn from global benchmark, and we must develop our quality systems so that our products and services could be recognized. So thank you very much for your thoughts, Professor Mukherjee. And although we would have loved to continue with your speech, but looking into the time constant, as already we are running behind 30 minutes. Thank you so much. And now we have Ms. Nirupma Sundarajan. She is senior research fellow of Pehle India Foundation. I would like to invite Ms. Nirupma Sundarajan for.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and good afternoon to all of you. So I much like what Arpita said before me, so it's been an incredibly enriching discussion so far and lots of different viewpoints. And I think Mr. Gopal Agarwal did kind of lay the foundation in terms of what the government's plans are for the next couple of years in terms of what policies that they're coming up with. And Mr. Omkarishwar Pandey's had specified earlier also, and as part of the discussion, that rural India is kind of a focus. So I'm going to try and marry the two for the purposes of my views here. So there are two or three policies that I would like for us to pick up in terms of what Mr. Gopal Agarwal specified. So let's look at the logistics policy that is there. Let's look at the retail policy. And let's look at basically our foreign trade policy, and the link that we have for each of these with basically rural India. The fact of the matter is, I think in most cases when we are formulating policy, and I agree completely that we really need, big push economic reforms. But what we fail to see is that the big push economic reforms are not necessarily based on the size of the reform per se, but on the kind of impact and broad-based impact that it can have. Now, logistics is something of that nature. While we are so focused on building the infrastructure, the roads and the networks, etc., we're not focused on the services that are being also offered. So, for example, if we want exports to thrive, if we want rural economy and rural industry to thrive, market connectivity becomes an essential part or component of that story. And for that, we really need to be creating rural hubs for logistics, which we currently don't have. And the logistics policy, which I have seen, while it concentrates a lot on creating the inroad, so to speak, the connectivity aspect is not really brought out very clearly. And that's a huge missing chunk. And this is as far as looking at connectivity within the country is concerned. We also have to look at cost of transportation, logistics, and sending our products, and especially for smaller businesses and MSMEs outside of the country. So this entire concept of using e-commerce, for example, to facilitate exports is in fact incredibly difficult today because of various reasons, but logistics continues to be a very, very big challenge. So when we think of logistics, we will have to think of it in a broader scope and in a manner which also includes your rural economy. As of now, I think we're still thinking of rural economy as an economy which is very separate from the urban economy. That's not the case. It's just that the features and what is required of the rural economy and for the rural economy may be different. But when we're creating policy, we have to look at a way of integrating both. And that integration aspect, I believe, is missing. Second, when we're looking at, let's say, retail, I fundamentally have a problem when the government speaks of a retail policy and then of an e-commerce policy as two separate policies. I, for one, have been talking for a very long time of having a comprehensive retail policy. There is a huge difference of thinking and approach if you're going to look at e-commerce as something different from retail. It is not. On the one hand, you're looking at using e-commerce as a facilitator for exports, as a facilitator for job creation. But as Arpita rightly pointed out, the policy reforms are not in line with your objectives. For example, again, and I'll pick up exactly the same point that Arpita did on not allowing inventory-based models. How do you expect the bigger e-commerce players, for example, like Amazon, who are foreign players, who can actually help facilitate exports, do so if they're not allowed to hold inventory? So there is a huge disconnect between what we are wanting to do and how policy is being implemented. Third, let's look at foreign trade. Now, this is slightly more of a global perspective and in terms of India's own geopolitical relationships. We have not used our domestic assistance program or our outward FDI as effectively as, let's say, China has. In fact, we have done very, very little in order to actually cement our geopolitical ties using, let's say, outward FDI. As I think there was a gentleman from the US government who had actually coined the term of saying how China had weaponized their ODI. We don't need to weaponize it, but we have faltered on multiple levels when it comes to our dealings with our geopolitical partners, when it comes to offering assistance. Why is this important in the context of even domestic economy? Because at times where we had economic sanctions, or when we have been threatened with economic sanctions, or when we have to secure markets for a product, our geopolitical allies and trade partners will be the first ones that we will look towards in order to support an economy which is otherwise being, for a lack of a better word, shunned by your usual peers. Now, today, US is again saying that they may impose sanctions if we continue our defense deal with Russia. Now, these are concepts that you're going to keep coming up again and again. The fact that we weren't allowed to buy oil from Iran when the sanctions against Iran was happening, though we did manage to go and negotiate with the US and find ourselves sometime. But these are aspects that we will have to look at and we will have to take a position. So while we may be moving towards a bipolar world in that sense, we need to also remember that the idea of globalization also means that your domestic economy today is dependent and very closely integrated with other economies of the world and demand in other countries. And that is something that we'll have to continue to develop and focus on. The last bit that I'll say, because I know we are running out of time, is generally about how we are spending our money. You see, whether it's subsidies, whether it is universal basic income, and we've had these debates on our own Pehle India Foundation platforms. The fundamental problem with most reforms and schemes is, where is the money going to come from? We have only a limited budget, and you need to create space. And every single ministry and department and division is going to be making demands for their budget. We done last year for our pre-budget seminar, we had actually undertaken huge analysis of the central sector schemes and the CS and the CSS scheme, centrally sponsored schemes. And the amount of money that we're spending there, with no way of actually undertaking any kind of evaluation of the impact, is actually is not a very good way to plan. For each of us, when we are spending the volumes of money that we are on schemes which are not being used properly, and where is the impact evaluation? Even though the Niti Aayog has a dedicated division under them, which is the DMEO, which is the Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, and while they're doing their best to undertake it, this is something that has to be thought through carefully at the time of conceptualizing schemes. And I'm saying schemes, not just subsidies. And you have divisions, and you have the textile ministry running 28 or 30 schemes. There is no need for such kind of expenditure on these kind of schemes, and they're all large allocations. There has to be a scientific way of us spending, of government expenditure, because the government is the largest spender, but it has to be done in a lot more scientific manner than what we're currently doing. And for my part, a lot of it seems to be very ad hoc in terms of creating schemes and catering to a very small section of the population, when instead slightly broader based schemes which affect where you can subsume some, etc., and more pointed targeted relief may have a better impact. So sometimes it's not necessarily just the scale of the reform or how big it is. While it's okay, but the bigness or the great impact has to be judged by a separate set of parameters, of which impact has to be one of it. How many people it has impacted, to what extent, and what has been the multiplier. And I think that philosophical change in terms of how we are drafting a budget and how we are planning expenditure is something that this government hopefully will consider, will think about very seriously, and possibly adopt for future budgets as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sundarajan, because you highlighted a number of issues, particularly informing. The policies must be informing each other. And like you mentioned the example of retail and then technology, and there you mentioned that, okay, how it could be in isolation. And this is one example, and we need to look into, in larger policy perspective, we need to look into all the policies should be informing each other. We are in line. And also you mentioned about scientific calculation about spendings, government spendings. And that also takes me to another related point, that you see, in India, procurement has not been formalized as a profession so far. Still, we are in the era of materials management, and per se, we are moving with that. So Procurement Act, as I understand, for lot 8 to 9 years, it's in Parliament. Once it goes to Rajya Sabha, comes back, and it's going on. It has not been passed. So professionalization of procurement at all the levels would also help in bringing the scientific calculation to the spending and estimation. That's one area we can look into. Thank you so much for your wonderful thoughts and your time. And now, not taking much of the time, it's time to invite the chair of the session, very distinguished scholar, Professor Dr. Himachalam Das Raju. Formerly, he was Dean and Director at Sri Venkateshwara University, Tirupati, visiting fellow at University of Essex in UK, a very senior finance scholar, economic scholar, also formerly Professor Emeritus of UGC and Senior Fellow of. So, Professor Dr. Himachalam Das Raju.
Thank you, Professor Shivji. Good afternoon, all the chief guests, guests of honor, special guests, invitees, and participants, and organizing team of Indian Observer Post, New Delhi. It gives me a great pleasure to privilege to associate in the national webinar on 21st Ideas to PM Modi ji for Rural India in 2021. So at the outset, let me congratulate and appreciate Wonkar Pandey for having a brilliant topic for a debate before pre-budget. And this kind of culmination of exercises are very essential in order to stimulate the economy and give some kind of useful decisions, and it may be very much useful for policy framework. That was before this the budget. And in that way, they are doing a wonderful job. And I hope that all kinds of decisions made by the galaxy of the speakers may carry out in the form of a consolidated book and other things rather. And this report will be submitted to the government of India, hope rather. And after listening all, I left nothing to say anything. And Professor Shuji have analyzed each and every the speaker's presentation. It is a wonderful rather. All the speakers presented their views in an excellent way. And I also learned a lot of things out of these wonderful presentations rather. I am once again thankful to Shuji also for having given me an opportunity to involve in this process rather. And even when we think of this kind of exercises, particularly with regarding to this the situation where we are living, my dear friends, we are living in a very specific situation, very pathetic situation, and the environment, global environment, where we are facing a lot of problems in terms of economic stabilization, economic growth, and the living conditions of the populations, and whatnot, each and everything has been dislocated and suffered like anything due to COVID-19. And if I am very prepared to refer by taking 2 or 3 minutes to review the entire things what happened due to this COVID-19 pandemic last year. The COVID-19 has widely spread at alarming speed, infecting the millions of the people, putting economic activity in a total grind halt, increasing unemployment, dislocating the supply chain and whatnot, each and everything rather, and that put the people and the economies of various countries or across countries in a greater the problem. This kind of devastating virus, which was declared by the WHO, we know very well as a pandemic, it is a very peculiar case rather, has taken over almost 195 countries in its total grip. This virus has created very serious threat to the global economy as well, and which is already in grave peril. The second strain we are afraid again. This was started in almost all European countries. They have declared lockdown and other things rather, and it is up to developing economies like us, say, to take serious note and serious precautions on the second strain rather. And it is also creating some kind of confusion and some kind of discomfort for the economic prosperity and other things rather. The catching up emerging growth opportunities and save the economy, the people and the environment of the environment, the countries, more so developing countries, have to put the economy in the right fast track by adopting new economic business development models. It should be based on emerging post COVID-19 new normal in this regard rather. So after experiencing the bitter the problems and also the serious issues with regarding to economic recession and other things rather, it's not common for us. Even almost all the countries are all suffering rather. So at this juncture, what kind of decision we have to take, how we are going to proceed further, and what kind of strategies we have to adopt, maybe the business and economic standards in order to say improvise our the economic situation there. In this case, certainly the topic which we are focusing, IPO is focusing on the rural development is very essential. Rather, since 40 years I am listening that I remember exactly Mahalanavi is saying that balanced regional development, import substitution and export promotion rather. And of course we are at it. Our present government is doing a lot of work, Make in India and startups and other related issues in order to improve the manufacturing of various kinds of goods and services. And even then we need more exports so that we can conserve a lot of foreign currency and we can strengthen the economy base rather. And with regard to balanced regional development, I am having my own doubt, my dear friends. Even today, there is a big disparity between the rural and also urban areas. So we can't compare urban and rural areas. So in this aspect, certainly we need some kind of inclusive growth and sustainable development. So whatever growth we are having some growth. That growth is not inclusive, and that growth is not the sustainable rather. So that's why the policy, while taking any policy, we have to look at various the variables that comes to that comes to influence these kind of the segments, meaning the inclusive growth and the sustainable development. We have to focus our attention. And in this regard, we have to put a question for us. Today, we had a galaxy of speakers and they have given a wonderful speech focusing their ideas on various aspects. And some people more focus their attention on rural development, how we can develop the rural economy on par with urban and other economic development rather. As one of the speakers rightly said, that is Sri Gopal Krishna Agarwal ji, he said that we are having V-shaped economy. No doubt about that we are having V-shaped recovery. And before this lockdown in March 24th, I think so, the stock market the Sensex was around 35,000 plus. And now the Sensex has crossed the 50,000. Yesterday it crossed 50,000. So you see the rapid growth in terms of why, because stock market operations is also one of the indicators of economic development of any particular country. It shows that the foreign investors are having a lot of the confidence in the Indian economy. That's why they are making an investment. If foreign investors are not having that confidence, they are afraid about the Indian economic prosperity. They won't come forward to make an investment. That is an important indication that India is growing like anything. India is going to become shortly the superpower throughout the world, no doubt about it. Subject to some kind of corrections and also some kind of the policy decisions in the crucial areas, particularly on this rural development rather. Here, if you put a big question, what is the new normal after this post-COVID? What is the new normal? Number of people, experts are saying that there is no other alternative for us. Technology is the technology-driven economy is the important thing. We have to focus our attention on those lines rather. It is true that technology has developed like anything in each and every segment, financial sector, marketing, even e-commerce, whatnot, each and everything. The technology is doing wonderful job, except in agriculture sector. Why we are thinking on those lines? Why we should not have that kind of advanced tech? We should not bring that much of advanced technology into the agriculture segment. Thus, these disruptive technologies are doing wonderful job, like this blockchain, IoT, robotics, and other things. Lot of disruptive technologies are coming up. Why? Because even foreign country, Europe, I am having one friend in the Bodo University of Montes. He is saying that your country is good at the latest technology, are good at technology. Your youngsters are having experts in the technology, something like that. I felt very happy on that day when that professor commented like this. I am very happy. Why? Because our youngsters are doing lot of innovations, lot of wonderful job. Just refer to the recent cricket case. Our youngsters has smashed the entire ground of this one. You see, youngsters are having lot of potentiality, a lot of innovative thinking, lot of ideology and other things. That's why my focus is more on. So we have to develop young entrepreneurship. Then only we can have this inclusive growth and sustainable economic development rather. If you put some questions, the digital transformation of India is a vital need of the hour. And this is very important. We have to have the quick digital transformation. The post-COVID-19 development may be technology driven. Accordingly, we have to train up the people, skill the people, reskill the people, whatever it may be, what you want, we can train up the people. Then only our people can get employment in our India, in our own area without having any migration and other things rather. And the other important thing is disruptive technology may replace the existing employment capacity of the rural pair. And that is not correct rather. And if everybody thinks that technology is going to replace the labor, then we can't move ahead as per the development that is taking place. We have to accept any development, and according to the development, we have to move forward. We should not think in terms of stopping the development. If you want to stop the development, your progress will be grind halted rather. So we want to move ahead according to the developments and other related technological innovations that are taking place throughout the globe. Why? Because we are in the global environment. We have to interlink our Indian economy to the global economy. Likewise, we have to interlink with integrate the rural economy with the urban economy. Then only rural prosperity will come. Then only rural progress will take place. Then only farmers will come forward in all terms of the energy, maybe monetary-wise, social, and monetary aspects also. So here in this case, my idea is in this regard is with this observations of various speakers spoke on various crucial aspects. I want to focus my attention on two important areas. One is inclusive growth and sustainable development of rural India through youth entrepreneurship development. Young entrepreneurship is very essential. If you want to take up this young entrepreneurship as a major drive in order to say convince and influence the youngsters, then the youngsters will come up like anything rather. Why? Because they are having lot of energy, lot of innovative ideology. They can come forward, but simply they need some kind of encouragement from the public or from the say entrepreneurs or from the society and other related aspects. Here, I want to focus one thing. We are thinking always, we are emphasizing always inclusive growth and sustainable development. These developments should focus mainly on three important aspects. One is social development, economic development, and also environmental development. We are not at all taken into consideration the environmental aspects in the years to come. That is going to be an important drawback to Indian economy rather. That's why we have to focus our attention on this environment also. That's why in UN Sustainable Development Goals and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, environmental protection is also one of the things, and it covers widely, covering the social, economic, and also environmental aspects. And if you are framing any kind of policy for overall rural development, we have to think on those lines. We have to do some kind of inputs for social development, economic development, and also environmental development rather. And another important point I want to make it clear is, for this purpose, we have to nurture the entrepreneurship. Without nurturing entrepreneurship, without promoting entrepreneurship, it is highly difficult rather. I told you already, youngsters should be motivated in such a way to become an entrepreneur, and they should be given proper training, skilling or reskilling in their respective fields. Then they can get their employment in their local areas, so that we can minimize the the labor migration and other things, what we faced very, very pathetic situation during COVID-19 2020. Lot of people without having jobs, they started going back to their home on foot. So that is very pity rather, of course, and the government came into rescue to safeguard their interest, and they have supported them. That is entirely different issue rather. This kind of situation could not come again in our global economic system. And in this case, how we are going to nurturing the entrepreneurship, and where we are nurturing the entrepreneurship, and what is the major area we are going to have. And of course, we are having good the major industrial development, and we are having good IT sector and manufacturing sector in a large scale. And we have to focus our attention on micro, small, and medium enterprises rather. And knowing the importance of micro, small, medium enterprises contribution for the overall economic development of any country, the UN has declared June 27th of every year to observe MSME's Day. MSME's Day. June 27th of every year, we are going to observe MSME's Day by highlighting its importance, progress, and other things rather. By focusing more attention on the promotion of MSMEs, certainly we can achieve 17 sustainable development goals. And if you are achieving 17 sustainable development goals, then the overall progress will take place. And even rural development has taken to a greater height, so that even rural population will come out successfully on par with the urban area people rather. And another important thing I want to make it clear that, so here in this case, we have to promote the technology. I emphasized much about the technological advancement in the beginning itself. So we have to promote more tech-based startups in the agriculture sector. And just like say whatever facilities which we are having with regard to transport and other things rather. And my dear friends, you know very well, since the globalization, since 1991, all segments, if you look back the progress of all the segments of our economy, all the sectors has developed, say in finance sector, transportation, and insurance, whatnot, each and everything rather. So communication, and with a simple smartphone, we are doing a lot of things without moving to bank or other places and things. So that is the facility which we are having. Even Amazon Go, if you go with the Amazon Go app, if you go to the Amazon shop, by picking up simply the whatever products if you want, by simply going out, there is no need for you to wait in a long queue for making payment. By simply if you step out, automatically amount will be cut down from your account. Amount will be debited from the customer account and credited to the Amazon stores. That is the technology which we are having. Likewise, if you take any, say, the transportation,
Professor Himachalam sir, in fact, the second session is there. So although I'm not supposed to intervene because the session chair is when he's speaking, I should not be speaking. Just to request if you can summarize.
Okay, I will conclude.
Thank you. Thank you.
Likewise, even agriculture segment also needs the technology like this. If they want to plow, they want to ripe the crop, and they want to say harvest anything, and they want to get anything, simply they can call the people, and they can avail the services, just like this whatever the services we are getting like this, by paying based on the hours and other things, so that the burden on the farmers may be very less. There is no need to have huge investment on purchase of tractors and heavy materials and machinery in order to say continue their cultivation activities rather. And with these few remarks, I want to emphasize once again, it is better to focus our attention on balanced regional development and also export promotion and import substitution. It is possible when you focus your attention on rural development. Even in the rural development, we have to encourage young entrepreneurship in MSMEs, and through this, certainly you can have we can have sustainable developments, or otherwise it is highly difficult rather. And whatever the progress which we are having, as Sri Gopal Krishna Agarwal ji told, we are having V-shape recovery, and we are going to have some more the prominent developments in years to come in almost all the segments rather. These are some kind of small tips in order to improve the existing system. With these few remarks, I conclude my speech. Once again, I thank IPO organization, more so Omkar Pandeji, and also Shivke Tripaji, and other galaxy of the speakers. We have delivered wonderful speech in this in this webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Himachalam, and special thanks to all the panelists, including our chief guest, Sri Gopal Krishna Agarwal ji, Ambassador Anup Mudgal, and our keynote speaker, Puran Pandey ji. And now I would invite host and editor-in-chief of Indian Observer Post, Omkareshwar Pandey ji, for formal vote of thanks and concluding the session and taking it to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shiv Tripathi. I don't think this is the time to give vote on thanks because we are migrating to the second session. And before we move to the second session, I would ask the chair to allow me to run the video once more so that we can have a small breathing. So I'm with your permission, I'm running the video. I think there is some technical glitch. I'll have to fix. Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite Dr. Rahul Singh ji, who is a professor and chair of strategy, innovation, and entrepreneurship area of BIMTech, Great Honor.
Thank you so much, Omkarji. It's a pleasure to be part of this gathering. A fantastic session on the topic that you have created, I think. 21 ideas for 2021, especially for rural India. That's a great idea. The first session was really great. There are a lot of inputs, and if we pick up maybe 2-3 ideas from each of the panel members, we automatically make 21 ideas. So that way it has been fantastic. I understand our session has been running, our session is running a little late. It's going longer, so there might be a few other commitments I'm going to be short on it. My role is more on moderation, so I'm not going to kick off on the content side. I will save time, and I'll request all the panel members. I'm going to introduce each one of them, including Mr. Iyer, who is going to conclude the session and offer the vote of thanks for the day. So pleasure having everyone again. This session is primarily on the ideation process, the 21 ideas, which are combined, picked up by, and going to be presented by Dr. Pratish Kumar Sahu, who is faculty member at Birla Global University in Odisha. The session is going to be chaired, and we are going to have a concluding thoughts from Major General Dilawar Singh. He is a very known personality of the country, former DG, NCC, and NYK, founder director of Global Chamber of Sports, Education, and Culture, and very active member of this group. When it comes to the programs of Indian Observer Post, I think he has been actively engaging with the programs. Some of his ideas are very fresh. We are going to have Mr. Iyer, who is a very established and renowned editor, media person. So Chandran Iyer, he founded and he's publishing the Corporate Tycoons magazine, which is a published paper magazine, but he also created Corporate Tourism, which is an online magazine. And there are a few other things that he has done in life, in almost 30 years life, which is relating to media and social media, mainstream media and social media. Especially, he has been the associate editor of the tabloid Midday, some of the credentials that he has. So I have not spoken about our speakers today or the participants today in the session, just to save time. But indeed, a few words for Dr. Sahu. He's an accomplished economist. He has been working on different issues, comes with a practice background and theory background both, right? So I think we are going to have the presentation from somebody who not only understands how the theoretical process takes place, but also how practices are being developed and how models are getting implemented. So I think from the first session, a lot of issues came on the policy reforms and implementation side. So implementation, execution is very, very crucial in the whole game. And when it comes at country level, I think I only recall, people like Tony Blair or Singaporean Prime Minister or Korea or Japan. These countries have done fantastic on their execution. So not only the policy, infrastructure constraints everyone faces in the starting time, but how policy and execution is combined to deliver value is what these countries have done. So very preliminary level thoughts, and I will proceed with the session now and would like to invite Dr. Sahu first to present how these 21 ideas have been picked up and how is this going to shape up. Dr. Sahu, please. Do we have some help to take him in the loop?
I think, am I audible now? Sorry.
You can go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, the host was not allowing me to mute, so unmute, sorry. So anyway, so thank you, Professor Rahul Singh, and good afternoon to all of you. Probably I have been assigned with the most difficult job of analyzing and also like compiling everyone's ideas. And like here, I'll not be speaking much about my ideas of this, but rather I will be going through all these ideas that I have compiled. And since we are running sort of time on almost late by more than an hour, I know that some of these points have already been discussed also. So I'll not be getting into all these points in detail, but my preliminary assumptions is that when I received these responses from several academicians, particularly from East, West, North, South, every parts of the country, I had seen that these academicians had not only given the idea, they had also given the solutions. That means how to implement that idea has also been given by some of these academicians. And I'm not getting into the details of like what are these situations or the problems that we are facing right now. Rather, I would go ahead with all these presentations, not rather presentations, but the ideas that are the suggestions being given by all the participants, all the professors from different parts of the country. And we have received huge responses in this context, and suggestions are from different professionals also who are working in different fields, who are also working in the village, rural areas, the academicians, different from different institutions. There are huge responses. And it was in fact difficult for me to compile all these ideas because I will not be speaking my idea. Their ideas to compile is a difficult task, but still I will try and I will give that what are their suggestions are in this context. And what I have done is, like every ideas have come with 2-3 pages, like 400 to 500 or 600 words. So instead of reading out all these things, given the time constraint, we have summed up each suggestions in 2 or 3 sentences. A proper headline or heading is also assigned against each of these suggestions. The first suggestions that I would like to say that this is being given by Dr. Badrinaran Dutt, who is a professor of economics at IIT Hyderabad. His emphasis is on rural non-farm activities. His idea is that since the household-owned business in rural areas have been mostly affected, the government should allocate certain funds in the coming budget for the household-owned businesses. If not possible or feasible that, then at least the government should ensure that these businesses in rural as well as in semi-urban areas should get credits from the commercial bank with a minimal interest rate or an interest-free loan for at least for the financial year 21 and 22. That's his idea from the Professor Badrinaran Dutt. And the second idea is given by Dr. Soumya Mukherjee, who is an assistant professor of finance in the University of Southampton, that is United Kingdom. Let us now ease the access of credit for the informal sector employees and also revisiting the tax structure. That's the heading I can say. So what is that idea is, given that a significant proportions of the non-agricultural workforce in the urban and the semi-urban area has been observed by the informal and unregistered establishment, most of them are economically marginalized. So government has taken several steps to or attempts to formalize informal works, and some more are also underway. But the solution is right now at present, looking at the COVID situations, let us ease the access to credits for the informal sector employees, allow them to sign up for self-targeting universal job guarantee schemes to cover many workers who are in hazardous work everywhere in the country. Another idea that is being given by the same professor is that advocating favorable policies to generate enough demand for the agro-based manufacturing products, such as the textile and apparels. It is quite important in this present context. The reasons is being explained. It is explained in detail in the report that what is the necessary requirements for providing such kind of to generate such demand in agro-based manufacturing, particularly in textile and apparels. And for all these suggestions, the economic or the historical database is also presented, and also what are these the recent efforts that is being undertaken by the government is also being presented. And in some of these cases, it is mentioned that though these efforts is being taken up by the government, but actually practically it is not possible in the ground level to implement these things, or the real beneficiaries are not being benefited, or the real persons are not getting the benefits of these things. So the implementation part is also another difficult task or difficult things that is being faced in rural areas, that might be for different regions, for the political regions or other things. but there are so many differences or difficulties in the implementation part. The suggestion 4, which is given by Dr. Santosh Kumar Sahu, who is an assistant professor of economics at IIT Madras. He has mostly focused on the MSME sectors. That is, the MSME needs to go global. And MSME is a crucial in contributing to the economic revival of the country. If I remember, in 2014 to 2019, one of the survey is conducted by the CII, Confederation Conduct Industrial Industry. According to their survey, that in the MSME sector, almost the generations of employment was 1.5 crore populations have got the employment opportunity in the last 5 years, 2014 to 19. So it's one of the area like where the employment generations can take place. So reviving the MSME sector is most crucial, and we have seen that in the Atmanirbhar Bharat or the special packages that is being given by the government in the recent announcement. Some of the packages that has also helped the MSME sector, but practically seeing that in the rural areas or the village areas, though the effort is being taken by the government or by the central government, particularly in the economic stimulus package, but this is not being practically is not possible for some people to get the credit. So I'm not getting into that, but the idea is to reduce the export barriers for MSME. MSMEs should be given a special package for the technology adoptions and the advancement. There is a need to build the capacity and awareness among the MSME about the trade agreements, standard process, and requirements of importing countries. So special MSME funds should be also created. So many suggestions are there. So we'll be providing all these suggestions in detail in the final report. So if I keep on reading, then it would take a lot of time to do that. So quickly going through some of the other suggestions, like the suggestion number 5, which is given by Dr. Amaresh Samantra, who is a professor of economics, Pondicherry University. He is also a former RBI economist with the RBI. He has he is talking about the funds for recapitalizations of the public sector banks. The government needs to recapitalize the public sector banks to a tune of what he has mentioned is at least rupees 5 lakh crore to enable the banks to absorb the part of the loan losses. The second suggestion that is being given by another suggestion given by Dr. Devashish Chakraborty, who is an associate professor of economics at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, IIFT. He has been talking about revise the import tariff, particularly in the context low or reduce the tariff on the input of the raw materials. Input and the raw materials, you reduce the tariff. And the final value-added product, probably there also the tariff concession has to be taken into account. So this is one of the idea by the Dr. Devashish Chakraborty. The next suggestion he has given is Startup India Initiative, extending the eligibility criteria. What we see that currently under the Startup India Initiative, the eligibility entities receives a 100% tax rebate on profit for a period of 3 years in a block of 7 years, provided that annual turnover does not exceed ₹25 crores in any financial years. It is proposed by Dr. Devashish is to, in the light of this possible surge in the number of startups, because there are so many people who have lost the job, laid off from the recent job. There are many MBA students who have not been placed. So looking at that, the possible surge in startup and the economic sluggishness, the year block at least can be increased or changed to 4 or 5. And also, he has been talking about a revised tax structure, that is the suggestion number 8. According to him, the tax structure, tax slabs need to be revised or upward revised. Why it is necessary? Because a number of senior as well as the mid-level executive from the private sector have lost their jobs and are unlikely to get a suitable profile in the desired qualification range very soon. Keeping otherwise high level of assets of these people and drop in the current income, it is proposed to change the existing tax structure. According to him, the tax structure should be 5% for 5 lakh to 7 lakh, and 20% for 7 to 12 lakh, and 30% is above to a lakh, because probably is that he's considering those people who are under the higher income group, they could be brought under the higher taxes, but lower income group tax people or the people who are having a more asset but they have lost the jobs should be reduced to a great extent. And the suggestion number 9, which is given by the Dr. Alok Mishra, who is an associate professor of School of Economics from Hyderabad Central University. His idea is that since there is the Kothari Commission of 1965, which has given the idea or had given in many occasions, many people have also discussed on these issues, like let us increase the expenditure on the education sector. So education, since the new economic policies, sorry, new educational policy of 2020 has been introduced, and also we have seen that in the COVID-19 due to pandemic and lockdowns have posed a severe challenges to the Indian education sector, then it is appropriate for the government to increase the expenditure on education as per the commission report, which is 6%, if not 6%, but close to 6%, so government should try to increase. And for that also the government should provide the GST relief subsidy on education loan sanction for the formal and skilled learned training or learning. The technology business houses should be encouraged to collaborate with educational institutions at both CSR and PPP mode to meet the educational, organizational, and IT infrastructure gap. And
so,
the next
Dr. Sahu, if you can quickly intervene, I just want to remind you that you have about 3-4 minutes time.
Okay. Then I'll quickly go through these items. Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, suggestion number 10, which is given by Dr. Amarinder Das, that is what he's talking about, a model for rural industrializations. I'm not going what is that model is, but he has given or explained all these things in detail. We can provide that in the final report. So model for rural industrializations. And the suggestion number 11, which is given by Dr. Rajiv Sutradhar, who is a professor of economics at Christ University, Bangalore. Before that, Dr. Amarinder Das is a reader of economics at Niger, Bhubaneswar. So next suggestion number 11, which is Dr. Rajiv Sutradhar, professor of economics at Christ University, Bangalore. He has given that you have to increase the expenditure or the budgetary component of NREGA. I'm not getting the details or the logic is given, so but just quick points. And also we have to increase the research and development in agriculture to promote the low cost technology. And also we have to go for building the agri-food processing units. So what is there, what is the number, and why do we need that? It is given, it will be submitted to you all in the report. And suggestion number 14, which is given by Dr. Devi Prasad Bal, who is an assistant professor of economics in Birla Global University. The government should increase informal sector funds and also increase the awareness program. For example, the government is allowing or making many policies, but there are people who are not aware of those policies, and these policies are not being implemented also. In school, colleges, universities, some types, these ideas is given by him, and also in detail it is mentioned. And suggestion number 15, which is given by Dr. Divakar Sahu, who is an faculty of economics at Banaras Hindu University. The focus is on the farm and non-farm sectors in the rural areas to strengthen the adaptive capacity of agriculture to climate change and the provision of credit. The info, that means he's mostly talking about the information communication technology, how to improve that. He has given that idea. The detail is also explained in that note. So the suggestion number 16, which is provided by Rajiv Khosla, who is an associate professor of DAV Institute of Management in Chandigarh. His idea is to promote the agro-based industries and also the food processing industries. And suggestion number 17 is provided by provided by Ashwini Lakshman, who is an SBI Youth Fellow in Mumbai. His idea is that setting up the Rural India Government Scheme Implementation, Monitoring and Evaluation Committee. That means government should allocate certain funds for setting a Rural India Government Scheme Implementation, Scheme Monitoring and Scheme Evaluation Committee. Because many funds are going and we do not know whether these funds are being really implemented or really the people are getting about. So the details is given also, and other suggestion how to implement that also is being given, how in coordinations with the village panchayat or with the district administration, everything is given and in detail is given in that. And suggestion number 8 is given by Dr. Raghavendra, who is a management consultant to the government of Karnataka, and for the from the Department of Personal and Administrative Reforms. He is talking about the welfare associated with the migrant laborers, how to increase the welfare associated with the migrant laborers. The detailed points are given. I cannot go through all these points due to the shortage of time. And suggestion number 19 is also given by the Sushil Kumar Singh, an assistant professor, who is talking about the rural agricultural development, mostly focusing towards the irrigation facility. The limit of the Kisan credit card, it should be increased, provide some life insurances to the farmers. These are the ideas that is being given by Dr. Sushil Singh. And Dr. Asutosh Singh, who is from the Purvanchal University, he is talking about encouraging towards the organic farming. That means as the demand in the world has been increasing day by day, so we should encourage towards an organic farming, and also cooperative based farming, because you have a small land holdings and all cooperative based farming. These ideas is being explained. And the suggestion number 21, which is the last suggestions by Dr. Anirban Biswas, who is from a professor of economics at Ambedkar University, Delhi, assistant professor of economics at Ambedkar University, Delhi. So he's talking about the same, mostly the SMEs, how to do, and also educating the farmers for scientific farming, not the farmers like the traditional scientific farming. He's talking on that, and how to do that also being suggested. There are also so many other suggestions we have received from Kavya Menon, who's focusing more on the women hygienic issues. There are also from KV Satyaprakash. He talks about the village with amenities, that means give or provide the urban amenities, urban facilities in rural areas, that is Pura. Provide urban amenities in rural areas, and there is no need for migrations. And what are the steps needs to be taken? They are doing some pilot study. They have given that idea also. So Rudresh Dahiya, he's an Youth for India fellow. He argues to ensure that people or the farmer or the local women farmer, particularly their organization is working on that, get an assured price for the harvest without depending on the cold storage. This ideas is given. And also the last one, I am talking about Miss Isa and Shreya. So both of them who are working at Wayanad, Kerala with the tribal communities, they talk about how to give a platform for livelihood generations and sustainable value chain by integrating marginalized communities and social groups with the formal market structure. They have been working in that. They are working on ground. These are the suggestions from them. There are so many other suggestions are there, but in total, the 21 suggestions have been included, and other suggestions are clubbed into another paragraph. But the thing is that these suggestions are, I just read out, I could not get time to get into the details, and none of us have the time to get into the detail. But rather what I did, like we have mentioned the overall theme of these ideas. And once you make a report, or once the report is prepared, all these ideas will be incorporated, and the detailed structure. And some of these economists who have given the idea, they have also extended the way how to implement those ideas and what is the logic on how to do that. The solution part is also given. It's not just questioning the government or asking the government to do this. Rather, they have given also the suggestion part. That is the best part of this. So since the time is not permitting me to talk more, what I would say, I would request Professor Rahul Singh to take over. Thank you, sir.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sao. I think it has been wonderful listening you, especially because 21 ideas presenting in less than 21 minutes is credible. So I really appreciate it and congratulate you for that. I'm sure you must have done real homework in presenting these 500 words into 2-3 sentences.
Yeah,
words, not even 50 words, less than that. So thank you so much for this hard work. And as you presented the design of the outcome, I think having the first session transcripted and getting the valued statement out of it converting that into a piece of work, and then these 21 ideas and your personal observations, that's going to be great outcome of this panel discussion. So thank you very much for this working. For some technical reason, we are not able to connect with Major General Dilawar Singh, but his observations could have been almost the same line. As I said, to save time, I'm also not going on my observations. We already have had a lot of things in the first session. So with this, we would be moving to conclude the day. And I would request Mr. Chandran Iyer to kindly pitch in and create the observations of the panel discussion overall and conclude the day. I would invite Mr. Iyer, please. I'm sorry you have to see me more because it's taking time for him to get in, but please bear with me till then. So hopefully we are going to have him, right? Because he was very much there. Mr. Iyer, are you able to unmute yourself? It's not working yet. Do you have your statement ready? I can be with your mouth. Allow me to be your mouthpiece then. No, I'm sure. Hemangi, could you help please to unmute Mr. Iyer, because sometimes we click mute again and we go unmute. We unmute again and we go muted. So if we do it multiple times, it's a problem. I can save time, but I still want Mr. Iyer to, we can help him getting in the frame to close the panel discussion. So Omkarji, we need your special help. Yes, he's already on task. In fact, he's managing it. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm just trying to entertain you. Maybe I could have given this time to Dr. Sao, who was already ready on the content side. I think we had some fantastic ideas in the first session. I don't want to go on the listing and observation and questions.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Okay. First of all, I take this opportunity to thank all the participants for the scintillating discussion on a very important topic. The topic was 21 ideas from 21 young economic thought leaders for revival of rural India in 2021. A summary of these ideas will be presented to the government, and I am sure it will help the government in formulating their policies. Thank you, Mr. Gopal Krishna, for your excellent speech. You are right in your assessment that the pandemic has created a good ecosystem for the e-commerce. I also want to thank Dr. Ram Upendra Das. You hit the nail on the head when you said we need to urbanize rural India without affecting the rural economy. I also take this opportunity to thank Mr. Anup Mudgal. I agree with your views that India has got a good scope for high-tech, mid-tech, low-tech, or jugaad because of diversity of economy. I also thank Mr. Ernest for your analysis. You are right in saying that unprecedented times calls for unprecedented measures. I also thank Mr. Poorna Chand Pandey. You are right in your observation that we have to find out what has been amiss in the rural economy. I also take the opportunity to thank Professor Arpita Mukherjee, Ms. Nirupama Soundarajan, Mr. Himachalan Das Raju, Mr. Rahul Singh, Mr. Pritish Sahu. And thank you, Mr. Shiv Tripathi, for moderating the webinar. And last but not the least, I want to thank my friend, Mr. Omkareshwar Pandey, for organizing this excellent webinar. Thank you, gentlemen.
I think a big clap for him by everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you
These
so
people
much,
together.
Chandranji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ernest, and I can see Rahul ji, especially you came, and Dr. Ravindra Narayan ji, who has joined from Odisha, Rakesh ji, the senior advocate from Supreme Court, Mr. Rajshekharan Pillai, he has joined from South Africa, and Mr. Rajiv Khoshla is there, Ashwini Shelke is there. Himangi has been a very, very great help to me. If Himangi could come on the screen so that people can see Puran Pandey sir, Pritish Shahu, you did a wonderful job. Anvesha Chakravarti, NC Rana, Vijaya Lakshmi, Anurag Lalji, a very, very senior officer, he is from Chhattisgarh, he is there. Priyanka Chakravarti is there. Vivek Vatsi, he has supported me a lot in this webinar. Devi Prasad Balji, and again, I am thanking you all. So we'll meet again and again. I hope that we will continue this kind of efforts. If anybody wants to say anything, it's a complete open session and informal session. So if anybody would like to say something or suggest anything, I'll be very happy to listen. Himangi, could you please unmute everybody? Himangi, are you there? Himangi, are you there? I think Himangi.
Yes, sir.
Please unmute everybody now.
Sir, I have tried to send the request to all.
Yeah, everybody can unmute themselves if they want. I'm not the host, so I cannot do anything. So
no, please. I have mentioned.
Okay, now I could. So let me just say goodbye. Thank you very, very much for this invitation. It was a fascinating discussion. I learned a lot, and so congratulations and thank you, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you, Mr. Ernest. Thank you.
Omkarji, namaskar. You have done a wonderful job. This is a wonderful exercise by gathering the ideas and expertise from various people across the country. And this will be a wonderful presentation to the policymakers. And I congratulate and I wish you all good luck in the future endeavors also. Thank you. Thank you very much, Omkarji.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Namaskar. Thank you. Rakesh ji, Rajshekharan ji, would you like to say something?
Thank you very much, Pandey. In fact, I have been hearing everyone, all erudite speeches and contents.
Mm-hmm.
But so far I am concerned, in the end, without taking any more time, I would say only one thing, that so far rural India is concerned, that is the root and origin for the nation, and it should be empowered that way. It should be looked upon that way, so that the rural India, which is always the root and basis for India, it should be shaped in such a way so that the people living in the rural areas of the nation, in fact, they should feel connected with the nation in such a way that they are part and parcel for the purposes of producing, for the purposes of contributing in the economy. And that is what is the main job of our administrator and rulers, that it should be shaped, the policies should be shaped in such a way that it must reach to them individually in the villages, and all infrastructure which is required for the purposes of giving them better opportunity, that should be there. And it's only a matter of giving opportunities by way of policies for all the purposes for which the rural people need. Rural people naturally consist of all agriculturists, and also the person who has now become a kind of semi-agriculturist. Now some of them have left agriculture, but still the agriculture remains agriculture.
Very
and
true.
It should be seen that way.
Very
Thank
true.
you.
Pandey sir, would you like to say something? at the end, Puran sir?
I have already said, that unless we build a new narrative around rural India, we will not be able to progress very, very much. So if we were to look at 5 trillion or 10 trillion or 20 trillion, a very large part of that hand-holding will need to be done by people in the rural area. And as I also gave a few examples, governments in the Western world are already doing it. And we have everything out here. The only thing is that how do we really build a narrative, put the policy in place, and see to it that without tinkering too much around, the money that the government has. I know every government has a limited money, but if you can put your
Instead of economy, I would like to request you to tell me about these kind of efforts which we are doing, how we can improve it, and really we want to make it a kind of positive activities so that we can become a voice for the government and the intelligentsia also. So, yeah, Pritesh, yeah, yes,
I
sir.
will suggest two processes which I also had some role to play in. One was the Germans were few years back, about 2.5 years back, they were trying to talk amongst themselves as to how they will really like to phase the coal out. They want to be green environment, driven by technology, have more green jobs. So they really consulted the people before the whole thing went to the government. And government thereafter accepted all the proposal and came out with a report which is called a German Coal Commission report. So look at it. The second example is in the UK. They also wanted to talk about how can UK become greener and cleaner, and they involved people through climate assembly process. So I will request you to have a look at these two reports and create platform which you already have and make people come together, dialogue, get the government in, and try and tell the government that, look, whatever you have been doing is coming straight from the people, and it is in the best interest of the government to be able to follow both the ideas and relevance of the ideas, and also how can that idea be fructified. That is my very brief, comment and suggestion.
Hello. Yes, Pritesh ji, I think you are unmuted now.
Yeah, I'm on.
Yeah,
fine.
Himangi, could you
So
please?
I think may leave the meeting now because I have one more things to deliver. So probably around 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, I have another lecture to deliver. So can I leave now? Hello. Okay, so your phone unmute.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pritesh ji. You did a wonderful job by collecting all the 21 ideas from 21 university people. Mr. Rajshekharan, if you want to say something.
First of all, I want to congratulate for your effort to have such an occasion, and you are invited me to also to participate. I have the privilege to listen the various dignitaries who are giving their ideas for empowering India by empowering the rural economy. Then what my saying is that rural India is the vertebra of India. Unless the vertebra is fixed, others are not right. So we have to fix the vertebra. So
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, then another
so for
thing
that, I think we will have to organize a special session on the rural urbanization. It's a Pura scheme, the providing urban amenities to rural areas has been a very old scheme of the government of India, which was replaced in between in because of the non-implementation of the whole idea. And I would give you an example to you. In China, I had researched and written an article. In China, there are several departments, and so they all unite and join together, and they have just one single department which is responsible for the urbanization of the rural. And that's why today China has become 51-52% rural, sorry, urban. And still we are only 30% urban, and the rest 70%. Since my childhood, I'm listening that we are 30% urban area, 70% rural area. Still the things are same, because we are not trying to urbanize the rural areas. We are urbanizing the urban areas, and that is not going forward.
Yes, yes. So regarding that, we cannot compare China to India. We are extremely too forward. China is south, we are north. It's like that. So the thing is that because of their policies, there is the policy over there. We have it's a big difference. So from my experience, I have to present 3 points. The most important problem with the Indian people is that they are more concerned about their rights than duty. They want job, but they are more concerned about their rights than duty that the government has to fix. Then, second thing, fix accountability in spending money at all levels. Because we got tenders, we got contractors, they are doing our job. Government is not doing directly. It is they are being giving tenders as well as contracts. But now the present government has to fix the responsibility to the contractors and the tendering people so that they will do their job correctly, so that repairing work will not come every year or simultaneously. That is to be fixed. Then, and another thing is that dignity of job that is not seen in India. People are feeling inferiority when they are doing some job. Others are thinking they are something supreme. That is, we have to create a culture of dignity in all the jobs. Every job is related. Take an example of a hospital. The cleaner, the security, the ambulance man, the doctor, the nurse, they are all doing the job for what? For saving a life. So all jobs are dignified. If one job is not done, it is very problematic. So that level of account, that level is a must. Dignity or to job is a must. And thank you, sir. I don't want to take much of my time.
Thank
I
you.
have
Thank
given
you so much. Thank you so much.
some ideas. We can go through it.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. And
thank you, sir.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Chandranji. Thank you. Thank you, Himachalam Ji. Thank you. Thank you, Rakesh Ji. Puran sir, thanks a lot. Thank you, Vijay Lakshmi, Anurag Lal Ji. Thank you, Sushil Singh Ji, Himangi, Priyanka, and everybody. Rajshekharan Ji. Thanks a lot.